Chapter 776. Let's talk about being scolded first. I'll resume one chapter from tomorrow onwards, because school has started. If I remember correctly, I don't seem to have written a single chapter in this book. Because of my updates, I want to have time to write a single chapter, so I might as well write a book. My brothers and sisters who read my book are all tolerant. I can't not be tolerant, I have no choice. Because my book is not good and the updates are not good. I persisted for a month and 2 chapters. If I remember correctly, the last time I was able to get full attendance should be 2 months before Samsara of Ichizo was published. This year, I am in my 3rd year of high school again. The reason why I can update this month is because of The Plague and Love. My original work is a lot less. Although I have been online classes, it is relatively easier. So, I think I will work hard for 2 chapters. Mountains and Rivers, there are no manuscripts. These past 2 months could be considered as the most hard-working I've ever been in the past year. I can no longer stay up late to write 9 coffins. Because of high blood pressure, I belong to the kind of person who takes medicine all year round. Of course, most importantly, I know that I still don't work hard. Fortunately, I persevered this month. Perhaps, for the people who wrote, this was nothing at all. But, for me, even if it is possible. After all, this month, there is an extra 600 yuan. This is too important. The goal I set for myself in writing this book is to keep updating. I have basically done this. In January, I really can't do it twice, but I made up for it later. Comparing myself to myself, it can be considered an improvement. Of course, I have been writing books for more than 8 years. Many friends have become gods. There are also old friends who have stayed away from online literature. The wind and clouds have dispersed. The reason why I persist is that, first, I like it. Second, I don't know what else to do other than writing books, the unbearable lightness of life. Third, I have always hoped to change through writing books. So far, it has not been realized. However, writing books is a fulcrum in my life. The Japanese star, Tamayoshi Miura, is 53 years old and still playing professional league. He said that when he retires, it will be the day he dies. I admire him very much. I also want to be like him. Because of The Plague and Love, many people are depressed at home. I don't. Instead, I like these days when I don't have to deal with more people. Writing books, reading books. These are such wonderful days. If possible, I would even like to continue. Of course, I hope that the epidemic will end soon and the country will be at peace. Thank you for this month. Thank you for persevering. Thank you to all of you who have been tolerating me and reading my books. Suddenly, he remembered Ren Xiaosu thanking him 7 times in the first sequence. Thank you all. I'm not a god, although I want to be one. These days, he chatted more with his friend who wrote books. Actually, those who had yet to become a god all had dreams of becoming a god. It was the same for me. Whenever I thought about it, my blood would boil. Although I'm not young anymore, compared to every day in the future, I'm still the youngest I've ever been. I really poured a lot of my blood, sweat, and tears into the 9 coffins, followed by the hidden samsara. Back then, he wanted to continue the story of 9 coffins. Even if it was a continuation of Dog-tailed Ferret, according to my personality, I would still finish it. What's more, it might not necessarily be a dog's tale. One of my characters you like. One of my passages you remember. That would be worth it. After all, it was enough that someone was watching. Finish what you started and guarantee that you would complete the book. This sentence will not change. There was probably half of the story of the hidden samsara. Of course, sometimes I had a hard time writing, and some parts felt like water. But, as I have said, that was the best I could have been for that chapter. I'm really sorry. At the beginning of February, a reader left a message saying, "You're the slowest author I've ever seen. Can you add a few more chapters in February?" At that time I was quite touched. Because the updates are so slow, you still insist on reading it. Thank you. Originally, I only wanted to make up for the missed chapters in February and then add the main chapter. In the end, I persevered. In a while, there would be one more chapter. This month can be considered complete. Actually, the motivation is still from you guys. Many comments I read. Many comments I don't dare. I'm afraid of being scolded. Thank you to those who have been reading the Book of Mountains and Rivers, old and new. I've seen every vote, every tip, every word of encouragement. Although I don't speak much, that's only because I don't have the face to see my elders. The road of writing a book will continue. Sometimes I wonder when I will be able to have no scruples. I can only rely on books to make a living. That's good. Actually, that has always been my wish. Perhaps everything is not far away. After all, I'm improving. Recently, I've been reading and studying. If it's the next book, I'll definitely jump out of the shackles of the 9 coffins. Because my wish has been fulfilled, and my feelings have been expressed. I'll do my best to write a book dedicated to you guys. As for what to write, I'll think about it later. From tomorrow onwards, it'll be even longer. Although I didn't go back to school for classes, the school has officially started. My focus has to return to my work. After all, the college entrance examination may only happen once in a lifetime for my students. My book can be read slowly. I feel that those who can read my book are the most adorable and pitiful readers. A bit like the fans of the China national football team. Mountains and rivers, I'm sorry to everyone. However, although the wind and rain are ahead, mountains and rivers will fight again. I haven't written a single chapter. In fact, what I want to express the most is my gratitude to everyone. That kind of feeling is indescribable. Without your support, there would be no perseverance of mountains and rivers. This sentence is absolutely sincere. In the future, I will work hard and keep walking. Finally, mountains and rivers, thank everyone again. May all of you be safe and sound after the epidemic. February 29, 2020. Chapter 777. Black Cloud, Red Dress. Those 2 colors were reflected in Sumo's eyes, and they were extremely eye-catching. And that black cloud was actually all soul energy. The girl in red was absorbing the soul energy. Who is that? Yi Wuhui couldn't help but ask. It seems to be an old friend. Sumo's mouth curved into a smile. At the same time, the demonic boat instantly jumped. They arrived 300,000 miles in one go. The demonic boat stopped outside the black cloud. Now, the black cloud was about half the size of the demon sealing continent. The girl in red meditated with her eyes closed, absorbing the black cloud bit by bit. But from a distance, it looked like a wisp. In reality, every single strand of it was like a great river, surging endlessly. She's cultivating? Yi Wuhui's eyes showed a touch of shock. Back then, she had followed Bu Miaotian and could be considered knowledgeable, but she had never seen such a cultivation method. Was this girl in red absorbing the soul energy of the entire demon sealing continent to cultivate? Sumo, what realm is she in? 3 reincarnation realms. Sumo said, but with her cultivation method, it's only a matter of time before she advances. As long as there is dead spirit chi, she can cultivate and advance, and the dead soul's star field is a treasure for her. Who is she? Yi Wuhui asked. A galaxy reincarnator. A galaxy reincarnator. Sumo's mouth curved. But I have to ask who she is. Because I'm a little confused. Sumo's heart moved, and the demonic boat moved forward again. At this time, they were only 10 miles away from the black cloud. The girl in red slowly opened her eyes. Because Sumo and Yi Wuhui had entered her alert range. The girl in red frowned slightly, looking at Sumo with a trace of vigilance and doubt in her eyes. Who are you? The girl in red asked. And who are you? Sumo smiled. Who I am has nothing to do with you. The girl in red smiled coldly. But I'm cultivating. I don't want you to take another step forward. I don't want to bother anyone, but I don't want anyone to bother me either. Hee hee. Sumo laughed again. Don't worry, I will definitely not disturb your cultivation. I just want to ask, are you Wang Yu or Shin Ming? Wang Yu? Shin Ming? Hearing these two names, Yi Wuhui could not help but be stunned. Weren't they Amu and Shin Yan's younger sisters? Back then, Wang Yu was poisoned by the tear of the river of forgetfulness and possessed by Shin Ming. The tears of the river of forgetfulness were originally unsolvable. However, Shin Yan later prepared a new Shura princess body for Shin Ming. Amu shattered the roulette, reforged karma, and transformed the 3 stars into the Milky Way. Then, many cultivators were revived. Wang Yu and Shin Ming became a pair of twin sisters. Previously, in the Milky Way era, they had been living with Mo Lang and Huan Hua. The girl in red in front of him was actually Wang Yu or Shin Ming. The girl in red frowned again, and then her eyes directly reflected Sumo's real body. That scene was extremely magical. Ghost eye. Sumo smiled slightly and thought to herself, unbearable ghost body. It seemed that her disguise technique was useless in front of her. Xiao Luo. The girl in red's tone was calm. Yi Wuhui listened to the girl in red's tone and felt that it was very special. This was because almost all the cultivators in the Milky Way who saw the Demon King of the 3 realms were excited and in awe. The girl in red seemed to be the first to call Xiao Luo by his name. After seeing Sumo, the girl in red was very calm and even a little alienated. It's me. Sumo smiled and nodded. At this time, he still could not determine whether the other party was Wang Yu or Shin Ming. This was because no matter which one she was, it was normal for her to have such an attitude towards him. Whether it was Wang Yu or Shin Ming, they were definitely the most favored people in the 3-star river. This was because their backgrounds were really powerful. In a sense, their backgrounds seemed to be even more powerful than Sumo's. I'm Wang Yu. Wang Yu's expression softened a little. Xiao Luo, it's been a long time. It's been a long time. Sumo smiled. Previously, I sensed the aura of the 3 realms. You were the one who left this continent a few days ago, right? Wang Yu asked. That's right. Sumo nodded and said, I've been here before. This continent is full of death and there's no vitality. Exactly. Wang Yu sneered. So, I took their souls and helped them to be reborn. Living like that is worse than death. Wang Yu's words were very light. However, when it came to Yi Wuhui's ears, he couldn't help but be speechless. Even if the cultivators of the demon-sealing continent were drunk and dreaming, they were still living beings after all. However, Wang Yu's technique directly ended their life and death. This ruthlessness was not something that ordinary people could have. At this moment, the little white pig stared blankly at the black cloud, drooling. The soul energy was a delicacy for the dragon-elephant soul-devouring beast. Its temptation was even greater than immortal pills and immortal fruit. Xiao Luo, you want to feed the pig. I can let it eat some. Wang Yu looked at the dragon-elephant soul-devouring beast and said calmly. Feed the pig? When the little white pig heard this, he was a little unhappy. Who's the pig? You're the pig? However, he thought in his heart, but he didn't act up. He still looked at Wang Yu with a cute expression. At this time, he must definitely have a good attitude. Otherwise, he would not be able to live with the food. Of course, he had to get Sumo's approval. Therefore, he looked at Sumo pitifully. Go. Eat more. Sumo did not stand on ceremony with Wang Yu. When the little white pig heard this, he immediately flew over happily. Miss Yu, I want to ask. Back then, when the galaxy was shattered, how did you reincarnate? Sumo asked. Devil darling, where are Huan Hua and the others? Reincarnation? Wang Yu shook his head. Xiao Luo, how can the people of our enchanted mansion reincarnate? This sentence made Sumo and Yi Wuhui stunned. Wang Yu's tone gave people the feeling that the people of Enchanted Mansion would live forever. Are all the people of the Wang family so domineering? Yi Wuhui secretly asked Sumo. The most domineering is Wang Han. Sumo said helplessly. Who is Wang Han? Yi Wuhui was stunned. Mu. Sumo said. Yi Wuhui was speechless. Since the people of Enchanted Mansion did not reincarnate, then, when the galaxy was shattered, where did you go? How did you escape from the catastrophe of the galaxy? Sumo asked again. My father used the Supreme Forbidden Map to open a passage to hidden treasure. Wang Yu's tone was slightly heavy with a trace of sadness in his arrogance, but he was seriously injured. The devil is no longer the devil. Wang Yu let out a long sigh. However, he protected the four of us. We did not die, so naturally, we will not reincarnate. Devil Darling, Huan Hua, Xin Ming and you. Sumo said. Yes. You are indeed the Devil Darling. Sumo sighed. So far, you are the only cultivators that I know who can open a passage to hidden treasure. My father said that there must be more. It's just that we have not met them. After all, there are still a few venerables that we have not met. Hidden treasure is too big. Wang Yu sighed. Then, where are the Devil Darling and the others? Sumo asked. They have entered the mortal world. Wang Yu said. What? Sumo could not help but be shocked. The Devil Darling has entered the mortal world. Yes. Wang Yu nodded. Father and mother have entered the mortal world. Devil Darling and Huan Hua have entered the mortal world? Sumo felt that this was the second most ridiculous thing she had heard. The first ridiculous thing was that the sea had entered the mortal world. The sea had entered the mortal world, and the Devil Darling had also entered the mortal world? Wang Yu saw that Sumo was puzzled, so he added, This mortal is not that mortal. Xiao Huang, one day you will understand. Perhaps that is also your final destination. Chapter 778. This mortal is not that mortal? Sumo raised her eyebrows. What do you mean? Nothing. Wang Yu shook his head. Even if I say it now, you might not understand. Besides, sometimes I don't understand it myself. Where are Mo Lang and the others? Sumo asked again. In a place that you can't reach yet. Wang Yu said lightly. The level of that world is even higher than Izong world. Then they don't care about the galaxy shattering? Sumo frowned. You have to know that many reincarnators of the galaxy are fighting to restore the galaxy. Different realms face different situations. Wang Yu looked at Sumo and said, Xiao Luo, do you think that the cultivators of the 3-star rivers in the past would be indifferent to everything? Cultivators of different realms face different opponent. Otherwise, do you think that there are no mighty cultivators of Lotus Realm and above in Izong world who can kill all the reincarnators of today? I understand. Sumo smiled in relief. We can still struggle because there are people bearing the burden for us. That's good. One day I will bear that burden. Sumo didn't ask any more questions. Wang Yu was right. Different realms face different situations. If Sumo wanted to know everything, she still had to increase her realm. His realm was still not enough. After all, he hadn't even reached the venerable realm. But Miss Yu, you are a reincarnator. Sumo frowned and looked at Wang Yu. Because I can feel the chi of reincarnation on you. That is the unique aura of a reincarnator of the galaxy. Hee. The corners of Wang Yu's mouth curled up. Xiao Luo, you are indeed worthy of being the person who could compete with my brother. I am indeed a reincarnator, but I didn't reincarnate when the galaxy was shattered. Sumo's gaze sharpened. What do you mean? I reincarnated in another world, Wang Yu said. Sumo was puzzled. The devil brought you to a hidden world, so why did you reincarnate? Back then, you were not only at the 3rd level of the rebirth realm, right? Why must we start all over again? In the Star River era, I was already at the peak of the eternal realm. Wang Yu sighed, but I couldn't advance to the venerable realm. Because my state of mind is not perfect. My father said that my mental state is lacking, and I'll never be able to attain the exalt realm. Oh! Sumo frowned. You have an inner demon? The exalt realm of the 3 dimensions was naturally not something that could be casually advanced. In the vast 3 realms, supremacies were as few as the morning stars. However, Wang Yu was different. Not only was she the daughter of Wang Ju, but she was also the daughter of the Spirit Lord. With an innate ghost body, she could definitely become a venerable. The 9 coffins dispersed, otherwise Wang Yu would definitely become the second Ghost Lord and control the ghost coffins. I have an inner demon. Wang Yu nodded her head slowly. What inner demon? Sumo said. My brother. Wang Yu smiled sweetly. Yi Wuhui watched from the side and couldn't help but smile. Because this was the first time she saw Wang Shui smile. Yi Wuhui realized that Wang Yu was definitely a beauty. That kind of beauty had an indescribable taste. Perhaps it was because she was born with an innate ghost body. Amu. Sumo couldn't help but smile as she understood. Yes. Wang Yu didn't feel embarrassed. I miss him very much. Xiao Luo, you should know. Back then, I was hit by Xin Yan's tears of the river of forgetfulness, and then my body was taken over by that girl Xin Ming. Of course I know. Sumo said. Later, my brother shattered the roulette in exchange for eternal life. I woke up, but I never saw him again. He actually didn't return to the galaxy. Wang Yu's tone was somewhat resentful. But what does this have to do with your reincarnation? Sumo said. I want to find my brother. Wang Yu said, so I must reincarnate. Sumo was stunned. Back then, I was in a closed world. My realm wasn't high enough. If I wanted to come out, the only way was to reincarnate. Wang Yu's eyes revealed a ruthless and determined look. Sumo, this Wang Yu is really devoted to Mu. Yi Wuhui said. Within the 3 realms galaxy, she is not the only one who is devoted to Amu. Sumo said secretly. Does Amu owe too many love debts? Doesn't the Holy Father Amu pay back his debts? Yi Wuhui smiled. How? Sumo secretly shook her head and smiled bitterly. Mu only asks for Xinyan. Songhai only asks for Yun San. The rest of them were all empty love. Mu can only pay them back with love, not love. The city lord of the northern cold city is alone in 2 realms. That Songhai's successor guards the sacred mountain alone. Also, the former Black Veil woman hated him because of love. Sumo sighed and said, I heard that when Mu first entered the northern cold sect, Lady Purple Jade died for him. The bird that fell on Amu's shoulder is already a kind of comfort. Yi Wuhui couldn't help but curl his lip. From what you said, the Holy Father Amu should be called Love Lord. Wouldn't many female cultivators lose their lives when they see Amu? Lose their lives? Many of these women have lived 2 lives. How can they lose their lives? Yi Wuhui couldn't help but be speechless. You're a man. Yi Wuhui was indignant. I'm not. Sumo shook her head. I only have Wu Air. I don't have any debts. I'm a loyal person. You? Yi Wuhui glared at Sumo angrily. At that moment, she really didn't know whether to be sad or happy. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You guys, don't say bad things about my brother. Wang Yu raised his eyebrows. I don't like it. Huh? Okay. Sumo and Yi Wuhui couldn't help but look at each other, feeling a little embarrassed. They had used voice transmission, but they didn't expect to be heard. Ghost eyes can distinguish between true and false. Ghost ears can hear the good and evil of the world. Wang Yu said slowly and then glanced at Yi Wuhui. Who is this lady? Why are you a spirit body? My name is Yi Wuhui. Greetings, Miss Yu. Yi Wuhui was very natural and unrestrained. My physical body was destroyed. My constitution is special, and I can't recast it for now. Oh! Wang Yu nodded. It's all right. Lotus scholars can all recast their bodies. If Xiao Luo can't do it in the future, I can find my brother and help you. Oh? Thank you in advance, Miss Yu. Yi Wuhui originally thought that Wang Yu was an extremely cold person, but he didn't expect him to take the initiative to help him. I can definitely do it too. Sumo smiled. That's even better, Wang Yu said calmly. Also, she's from the Yi clan of the Three Realms. I think Bu Miaotian will definitely have a way, Sumo said. The Yi clan of the Moon Villa? The Three Realms ghost genius Bu Miaotian? Wang Yu said. That's right, Sumo said. Wang Yu smiled faintly. Xiao Luo, protect her. Her spirit body is special, and it would be terrible if it was destroyed. However, I don't think you can count on Bu Miaotian. Huh. Sumo and Yi Wuhui were both stunned. What happened to my patriarch? Yi Wuhui hurriedly asked. Don't worry, he's not dead, Wang Yu said. However, I heard that he was suppressed by the corpse Taoist in another world. He's not even in the dust sieve world. It'll be a long time before he can save you. Chapter 779. The genius of the Three Realms was sealed in a different world? This was the first time Sumo and Yi Wuhui had heard of Bu Miaotian's whereabouts. Miss Yu, who is the corpse Taoist? Do you know which world my patriarch is in? Yi Wuhui asked again. The corpse Taoist is the founder of the corpse sect. It is said that he is a high-level Lotus Knight, but I have never seen him. I only heard that his puppetry technique is extremely exquisite, even comparable to Bu Miaotian's. The founder of the corpse sect? Sumo and Yi Wuhui could not help but look at each other. Not only had Sumo not heard of this person, but even Yi Wuhui did not know him. Yi Wuhui only knew that there were cultivators with higher status in the corpse sect, but she did not know who they were. The corpse sect is extremely huge, and it is known as the #1 immortal sect in Yizong. Apart from the dust world, it also has its power in several other worlds. The corpse sect in Dongyi Galaxy is only a small part of it. As for which world Bu Miaotian is sealed in, I do not know either. In any case, it is good that he is alive. Sumo comforted Yi Wuhui. One day you will meet again. Yes. Yi Wuhui nodded. Thank you for the news, Miss Yu. You have been looking for AMU, haven't you? Sumo looked at Wang Yu. Yes. Wang Yu nodded. However, I have to cultivate first. First, I have to reach the peak of the Eternal Realm. Otherwise, it will be difficult to protect myself in the Yizong world. The peak of the Eternal Realm was also the peak of the Rebirth Realm. That was the cultivation of a venerable one. In Wang Yu's opinion, such a realm could only protect himself in the Yizong world. Wang Yu's vision was definitely above the current Sumo. At the same time, Sumo once again realized that she had to improve her realm. MU is sealed in the Lazuli world, Sumo said. Wang Yu couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Where did you get this information from? A person who calls himself the Guardian King of the Three Realms, Sumo said. Dharma Lotus Supreme King. Wang Yu's eyes flashed. You've seen Dharma Lotus Supreme King of the Three Realms Galaxy? Yes, Sumo said. Then you really are a person with great luck. Wang Yu muttered to himself. I don't know how many cultivators want to find him, but they can't. Where is my brother sealed in the Glaze Realm? Wang Yu looked at Sumo and asked. The white-robed Guardian King didn't say the specifics. However, it was Yizong who sealed him, Sumo said. Yizong Purifier, hee. Wang Yu's eyes narrowed, and then he laughed coldly. I know. When I have perfected the Eternal Realm, I will go to the Glaze Realm to look for him. Actually, Xing Fei and Han Bingyi have already gone to the Glaze Realm, Sumo said. Once I'm done with my business, I will go there too. Oh, Wang Yu heard. Are they all reincarnators of the Three Realms? What realm are they in now? Reincarnation is a normal state for Xing Fei. Therefore, he has already recovered to his peak. You know how powerful the oceanic white light is. Cyan light can kill venerables, so can the white light. Hanbingi is at the peak of the eternal realm. She is not a reincarnator, but she came to the Izong realm before the three realms were destroyed. That's not bad. Wang Yu nodded. The Izong realm is too big, and you haven't met many strong cultivators yet. Their realms are barely passable. Miss Yu, you can also go to Dongi Galaxy in the future. Now it is called the Pure Land Galaxy. There are many reincarnators of the three-star galaxies in the northern chill city of the Pure Land Galaxy. Wang Yu laughed. Back then, I sensed something unusual in Dongi Galaxy. You must have summoned the power of the three realms. Except for you and my brother, I'm afraid no one else can do that. That's right, Sumo said. I summoned the remnant of the Star River to the Izong realm. It merged with the entire Dongi Galaxy and became the Pure Land Galaxy today. It's always good for a cultivator of the Star River to have a place to stay. Wang Yu nodded. If there's a chance, I will go to the northern chill city to take a look. There's one more thing I want to ask, Sumo said. How long has it been since you sensed the power of the three realms? 500 years, Wang Yu said. 500 years? Sumo took a deep breath. In other words, he must become a venerable in about 1,500 years. Otherwise, the immortal bathing ancient lotus would be meaningless. Xiao Luo, I have something else to say, but I don't know if I should say it. Please say it, Sumo said. You are too weak now, Wang Yu said slowly. It's impossible for your barrier to restore the Star River. Back then, you couldn't stop everything as a venerable. What's more, you are in the Izong realm now. Sumo was a little embarrassed. Then, she cupped her hands at Wang Yu. Miss Yu, I have learned a lot. Sumo understood that Wang Yu was telling the truth. His realm was far from enough. Even if he had many magic treasures, it was still not enough. When he faced the Peacock King, if Wang Shui hadn't intervened, he would have died. Before you reach the peak of the Eternal Realm, will you always cultivate in the Dead Soul Galaxy? Sumo asked. Yes. Wang Yu nodded. There are a lot of dead souls in the Dead Soul Star area. If we run into a few more continents like this one, we'll be doomed. If I encounter a few more continents like this, I will soon reach the peak. At this time, Wang Yu couldn't help but look at the demon ceiling continent that had turned into a black cloud. Only then did she notice that on the other side of the black cloud, the mountain-like dragon elephant soul-devouring beast was constantly absorbing the black aura. 1/5 of the entire black cloud had been eaten by it. Xiao Luo, take back your pig. Its real body is too ugly, and the key is that it can eat too much, Wang Yu said with a frown. Ha! Sumo laughed. Roar. The dragon elephant soul-devouring beast couldn't help but roar. It thought, who are you calling ugly? Didn't I just eat some of your dead souls? However, Sumo had already waved her hand and asked it to come back. Wang Yu was someone who couldn't be provoked. The tears of the river of forgetfulness had made Wang Yu suffer for almost a lifetime. Therefore, Devil Lang and Huan Hua doted on him very much. Even Shen Ming had to give him some respect. Domineering. If Wang Yu got angry, he might even roast the dragon elephant soul-devouring beast. At that time, who and how would Sumo reason with? Humph. The dragon elephant soul-devouring beast knew when to advance and when to retreat. It instantly turned into the appearance of a little white pig and lay on Sumo's shoulder, looking at Wang Yu cutely. The meaning was obvious. I'm not ugly, but I'm not full. I can only let you eat so much. I feel a little heartache. Wang Yu frowned, but he was straightforward. She really didn't expect that this fellow could eat so much. This was going to affect her own advancement. Humph. When the little white pig heard this, it immediately drooped its head. This time, acting cute didn't work. Ha ha! Sumo laughed. Humph. Digest those just now, it's probably enough for you to advance to the rebirth state. Go and sleep for a while. With that, Sumo directly kept it into the cosmos sack. The dragon elephant soul-devouring beast was a divine beast. Even if it didn't cultivate like a cultivator, it would automatically advance in level. However, this fellow definitely gained a huge advantage this time. Miss you, then I won't disturb your cultivation. Sumo cupped her fists at Wang Yu. In the north of the starry sky there are still 3 stars. I have some friendship with those 3 stars. I hope that you can show mercy. Got it. Don't worry, Wang Yu said. Goodbye. Take care. Sumo and Yi Wuhui cupped their fists at the same time. Take care. Wang Yu also cupped her fist. The demonic boat flashed, and Sumo and Yi Wuhui instantly disappeared. Wang Yu looked at the place where the demonic boat disappeared and smiled faintly. Then, she formed a strange seal with both hands. In front of her, a special teleportation array appeared. Wang Yu pinched with one hand, and a paper crane appeared on her fingertip. I met the Demon King, Wang Yu said softly. At the same time, she attached a trace of spiritual will onto the paper crane and entered the array. Mysterious light rippled, and the paper crane instantly disappeared. Chapter 780. The bamboo forest, the clear lake, the mist, the distant mountain. This place was like a paradise. Indistinctly, he could not tell how many houses were scattered around. Some ancient bamboo houses in the distance were emitting faint smoke. Mr. Ren was wearing a bamboo hat, carrying a fishing rod and a fish basket in his hand. Of course, he was going to the lake to fish, because that was his usual state. The winding path was filled with the fragrance of wildflowers. Mr. Wren's residence was a little far from the clear lake. Along the way, Mr. Wren was in a good mood. At this moment, he happened to pass by a bamboo house. The bamboo house was very old. There was a horizontal plaque on the door, with the words, "Listening World," written on it. The meaning of the words was simple and unadorned, with Taoist rhyme. At this moment, the door of the bamboo house was open. Mr. Wren couldn't help but be slightly stunned when he saw it, because he hadn't seen the door open for a long time. Inside the door, there was a long desk and a tall bookshelf. The 4 treasures of the study were all there. A 16 or 17-year-old boy servant, wearing a somewhat loose green shirt. At this moment, he was holding a long brush in his hand and seemed to be scribbling. However, the rice paper was dark, and nothing could be seen. It was extremely messy. It seemed that the boy servant was just scribbling. "Mr. Wren, are you going fishing?" At this moment, the boy servant in green looked up and saw Mr. Wren, and hurriedly bowed from a distance, very polite. "Oh!" Mr. Wren stopped and looked at the boy servant with a smile. "The Listening World Tower is actually open. Besides, why are you so early today, Shihua? Usually, you don't even get up when the sun is high in the sky." Shihua said embarrassedly. "Today, my young master was in a good mood and said that he wanted to get up in the morning to paint. So, I specially came to prepare and grind the ink and brush." Mr. Wren was stunned and asked, "Scholar, are you going to paint? That's really rare. When was the last time he painted?" Shihua blushed. "It's been a long time, a long time. I think it's been a long time." "Ha!" Mr. Wren laughed. "Last time, my batch of fish seemed to have just been thrown into the pond. Now it's almost grown into a dragon. If he still doesn't come to paint, this building will collapse. Today, he will definitely come." The servant smiled and said, "My young master said that if he doesn't paint soon, his brushwork will become rusty." "Scholar, when will you come?" Mr. Wren asked. "It should be soon." Muse Hua looked up at the sky. There was a sun hanging in the sky. The blue sky was as clear as a painting. "How about this?" Mr. Wren said. "At noon I'll bring 2 fish, and you ask your scholar to prepare some wine. If I see a pig farmer later, I'll invite him and we'll have a drink or 2. At the same time, I can also take a look at scholars' paintings. There are fish to eat? That's great. I like the fish in Guanxi Lake the most. Shu Hua's eyes lit up. Mr. Ren, I'll prepare a few side dishes later. My young master will be happy if you come. Okay. That's settled, Mr. Ren said and left with his fishing rod. However, he took 2 steps and returned. Muse Hua, don't touch the scholar's brush and ink. If you make trouble, no one will clean you up. Hee. Don't worry, Mr. Ren. The servant smiled and said, My scribbles don't count. I just write casually. I'm not as good as my young master. That's good. Mr. Ren nodded and went straight to Guanxi Lake. The distance between the World Listening Tower and Guanxi Lake was about 3 or 4 miles. In between, there was a medium-sized grassland. At this time, a man in black was holding a long whip in his hand. And on that grassland there was a group of pigs. Those pigs were of all colors. Black, white, black and white. They looked like a group of domestic pigs, but they looked quite clean. The man in black had a straw stick in his mouth. He crossed his arms and held the long whip, squinting at the group of pigs. Hey! I'm a pig farmer, Mr. Ren shouted with a smile. And I'm a fisherman. The man in black was looking at the pigs and didn't pay attention to Mr. Ren. What? You want my pig dung to be your bait again? I don't have it this month. Aunt Hua took it. She said my pig dung is the best fertilizer for her flowers. Bah! Mr. Ren scolded with a smile. My fish won't eat your pig dung. You pig farmers value your lover more than your friends. Aunt Hua asked you for pig dung, but didn't you give it to her shamelessly? Hey! The man in black wasn't embarrassed. You can give it to her. The point is that Aunt Hua will accept it. What if you give it to her? I won't give it to her. Mr. Ren said, The World Listening Tower is open. The man in black was stunned and immediately smiled. The scholar didn't die. Bullshit. If you didn't die, how could he die? Mr. Ren said, Just now, I passed by there and saw Muse Hua. He said that the scholar wants to paint. That's good news. The man in black said, I almost forgot what the scholar looks like. You know, my pigs have been out of the barn several times. So, I'm going to get 2 fish. I'll ask you out at noon. Let's go to the scholar's place for a drink. Mr. Ren said. Okay. The man in black said, Then I'll bring a few pig's hands. The scholar likes to eat that. I also want to see what that picky scholar is going to paint. Done. Mr. Ren nodded. But, you're a layman, why would you want to see a painting? It's better to bring a few pig's hands. Don't worry, the man in black said. Mr. Ren didn't say anything more and left directly. The man in black looked at Mr. Ren's back and couldn't help but look in the direction of the World Listening Tower. Then, a complicated look flashed in his eyes and he said to himself, The World Listening Tower is open? The scholar wants to paint? What's going on this time? Alas! The weather was originally good, but now it's going to be difficult again. My pigs haven't grown up yet. I hope the scholar can paint well. The man in black squinted at the pigs and muttered. Mr. Ren had already walked to the World Observation Lake. The lake was full of white lotus flowers. Those lotus flowers were the size of a bowl, without branches, crystal clear and fragrant. The water of the World Observation Lake was as clear as jade, and the waves were calm. There were many fish swimming in the lake. Standing by the lake, one could see clearly. Mr. Wren's bamboo stool had been placed there. That was his fixed position. At this moment, he stood in front of the bamboo stool and raised one hand. Whoosh, whoosh, his hand directly emitted thousands of golden lights. Those were the fish food that he prepared. The golden lights fell into the lake, causing countless ripples. Looking again, the fish in the lake were tumbling about, jumping about to their heart's content, eating happily. Among them, a few fishes faintly glowed with golden light. Ha ha! Mr. Wren smiled faintly, sat on the bamboo stool, and gently swung the fishing rod. The fishing line drew an arc, and the hook fell into the water. And Mr. Wren sat calmly on the bamboo stool. His eyes fell on the long swim bladder, watching it float and sink with the wave. However, it didn't move. He knew that there must be a fish that would take the bait. That kind of fish couldn't transform into a dragon. However, at this time, in Mr. Wren's eyes, it was not the reflection of the lake, but the stars. They were fleeting. However, young Master Wren's expression was calm and languid. He was unmoved. Suddenly, there was a crane cry in the void. Mr. Wren looked up, narrowed his eyes, and saw a pale white crane flying over his head. "Ha ha! No wonder the scholar wants to paint." Mr. Wren smiled. "It turns out that it's a flying crane." Chapter 781. In the Dead Soul's star domain, Wang Yu looked at the disappearing paper crane and said to herself, "Xiao Luo, I hope you can have a greater opportunity and become a venerable soon. That way, you will be able to come into contact with more powerful things." The array disappeared. Wang Yu began to absorb the soul energy of the demon sealing continent, the third level of the rebirth realm. According to Wang Yu's estimation, the power of this demon sealing continent was enough for her to advance to the sixth level of the rebirth realm. Unfortunately, there were very few such continents in the Dead Soul's star domain. Otherwise, if she encountered another 2 or 3 such continents, she would be able to reach the peak of the rebirth realm. Fortunately, there were still many resources in the Dead Soul's star domain, but it would take some time. Wang Yu could wait. Mu was in the glaze realm. This piece of news made Wang Yu's heart settle down. Wang Yu would definitely let herself reach the peak of the eternal realm before going to the glaze realm, because that was the only way to save her life. Wang Yu's understanding of the hidden realm was far better than Sumo's. She sat cross-legged as she breathed in and out. Streams of soul energy were being absorbed by her like a great river. All of this was enough for Wang Yu to cultivate for a period of time. At the same time, Wang Yu thought, "I wonder how Ming-er is doing?" Wang Yu and Xin Ming chose to reincarnate together. Wang Yu wanted to find Amu, while Xin Ming wanted to find Xin Yin. In fact, they knew that Amu and Xin Yin must be together. However, they were separated in the reincarnation cycle. They had not found each other yet. However, they had agreed that once they reached the peak of the eternal realm, they would go to the ancient Lotus star domain. As long as they were in the same star domain, they could sense each other's existence. Amu was in the glaze realm. Then, Xin Yin must be there too. When the time came, the sisters could go together. Phew! After sorting out her thoughts, Wang Yu exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. Then, she closed her eyes slightly and gradually entered a meditative state. Dead Soul's star domain, south. The demonic ship was flying across the Dead Soul's star region. This time, Sumo and Yi Wuhui were definitely familiar with the route, because, regardless of whether it was 3 million years ago or 3 million years later, they had all traveled this route. In fact, Sumo could directly enter the soul storage altar in the Dead Soul star domain. However, in the end, he decided to return to the Pure Land starfield. Moreover, in the Pure Land starfield, Sumo could also borrow the power of the galaxy to cultivate, which would allow her to achieve twice the result with half the effort. After all, it was a star region controlled by a 3-star reincarnator. There were still many unknown existences in the Dead Soul star region. Apart from the death spirit chi here, the other spirit chi was relatively thin. It would take more than 10 days to cross the Dead Soul's star region even with the demonic boat at full speed, because it was truly vast. Unless he performed a space jump, but there was no need for that at the moment. Now, they could already see the scattered stars area in the distance. The shattered star zone was like a grayish-white ribbon floating in the Dead Soul's star domain. After passing through this million-mile-wide scattered stars area and passing through the vacuum of the star region, they would reach the Pure Land star region. The Dead Soul's star region, the Pure Land star region, the White River, and the ancient Lotus Star region all belonged to the dust world, so there was no real interstellar barrier between them. Sumo, we are almost out of the Dead Souls Star region, Yi Wuhui said. Yes. Sumo nodded. In less than a day, we can enter the Pure Land Star region. I didn't expect that this trip to the Dead Souls Star region would take us 500 years, but we didn't gain much. Yi Wuhui chuckled and did not speak. She understood that although she had learned some things about the past and even news about Xiao Huang, she had not found the Plum Blossom 5 in the end. Unfortunately, Sumo hadn't found the Plum Blossom 5 in the end. It doesn't matter, we still have time. When you have cultivated enough, we will go to the Prajna world. Moreover, we will have Huang Ying to lead the way. He will definitely be a good guide. Yi Wuhui said. Yes. Sumo nodded with a smile. He knew that Yi Wuhui was doing his best to comfort him. However, it was also the truth. There were many things that could not be rushed, otherwise, haste makes waste. As the two spoke, the demonic ship entered the Scattered Stars area. Compared to 500 years ago when they passed through here, there was not much change. However, when they looked at the Scattered Stars area now, their feelings were completely different. After all, they had seen the prosperity of the Demon Moon world with their own eyes, and they had also seen its fall. Behind every dust of vast universe, there seems to be a story. Yi Wuhui sighed. If we did not return to 3 million years ago, how could we know the truth of the Demon Moon? How about Chun Yu Cho? Most of the time, all living beings are tools of the gods. Sumo laughed self-deprecatingly. In fact, in the 3 realms, wasn't I the same? In front of vast universe, any powerhouse is like a grain of dust. Perhaps we can change a world, a region, or even a moment every 1,000 years, but we cannot control the entire vast universe for eternity. We can only take advantage of the situation and change with it. At this point, Sumo gave a long sigh. Perhaps, AMU and I understood all of this too late. In front of vast universe, we are mortals. Yi Wuhui nodded and smiled. Hearing Yi Wuhui's words, Sumo couldn't help but be moved. What did you say? I said, in front of vast universe, we are mortals. Yi Wuhui turned to look at Sumo. What, is that wrong? No. Sumo shook her head. I was just thinking of Wang Yu's words. This mortal is not that mortal. Moreover, Songhai also said that he had become a mortal. In front of vast universe, we are all mortals. Perhaps the mortals that Songhai and Wang Yu speak of are a higher realm. But in front of vast universe, they call themselves mortals. In an instant, Sumo understood. But what kind of existence was that kind of mortal? The demonic boat moved forward. In fact, they didn't need to travel for too long in the million-mile Scattered Stars zone. But this time, they seemed to have used a few more hours than when they came here. After half a day, Sumo discovered that they seemed to have returned to the place where they had just entered. Because at this time, everything was exactly the same as before. Sumo's eyebrows arched. Sumo, something's wrong. Yi Wuhui was also startled. We seem to be going in circles. What's going on? At this time, Sumo had already spread out her divine sense. Within 1,000,000 miles, Sumo's divine sense could completely cover it. At the same time, her demonic eyes appeared and scanned through the entire Scattered Stars zone. Sumo could even see the other end of the Scattered Stars zone, the vacuum between 2 star fields. Jump! Sumo's brows furrowed as he shouted. The demonic boat instantly disappeared and then flashed again. However, something strange happened. Sumo and the others actually stayed where they were, as if they hadn't moved at all. Or, in other words, they jumped out and then jumped back. Sumo's expression couldn't help but change slightly. They seemed to have fallen into some array maze constructed by some mysterious power. Chapter 782. World Listening Tower. After Mr. Rin left, Muse tidied up the study. He threw his scribbles into the bamboo basket at the side. Then, he began to grind the ink and moisten the brush. There was a crane's cry. Muse raised his head and looked out the window, frowning. Flying crane? Long time no flying crane letter. Then, he saw the crane fly straight to the northwest. The northwest was no longer their village. After all, there were several villages like theirs on the outskirts of White Mountain. Grind the ink, moisten the brush, lay the paper, and burn the incense. The maids were quick and nimble, and soon they were ready. Although this world-listening tower had not been used for many years, it was clean and spotless. The brush, ink, paper, and inkstone were all exquisite, and there was no sign of age. The sun was high up in the sky. Muse guessed that his young master was coming, so he walked to the door to take a look. Sure enough, a pale-faced scholar slowly walked over from the path. He wore a scholarly robe and held a folding fan in his hand, giving off an elegant and distinguished air. He looked to be around 30 years old, and his body was a little thin, but his complexion was good. He swayed as he walked, muttering to himself as if he was reciting a poem. Seeing his young master's state, Muse wanted to laugh but did not dare. Although Muse had seen him many times, he found it interesting every time he saw his young master's appearance. In the words of the pig-herding man, his young master was extremely coquettish. However, there were not many who could understand his young master's words, and Muse was one of them. In Muse's opinion, his young master's words were not elegant, but rather vulgar. Immortals are good, drink, sing, and sleep. Immortals are good, be free and happy. Immortals, go once. Mortals, go once. Junro asks which is good. I say, mortals are the Tao. Young master. Muse's ears hurt, and he could not help but call out. The scholar had already walked in front of Muse. Why, is my poem not good? Young master, good poem. Good poem. Muse smiled apologetically. Good poem? The scholar did not think so, and looked at Muse with a faint smile. Muse, you are insincere. Of course, he doesn't mean what he says. Fu Hua cursed in her heart, but she didn't say anything. The scholar chuckled as he entered the world-listening tower. Then, he simply looked around. The teasing look in his eyes involuntarily disappeared. His eyes were deep and solemn. As the scholar entered, a couplet with vigorous strokes appeared on both sides of the bamboo door of the Tower of Listening. Heartless Tao 3000 gates, world-listening divine brush 1 universe. Young master, everything is ready. Also, just now, Mr. Rin passed by and said that he would bring you to drink with you at noon. He will also make an appointment with Senior 2. Those who fish and raise pigs are all here. The scholar's expression returned to normal. Muse Hua nodded. I've already agreed on behalf of the young master. Mr. Ren, I asked you to prepare the wine. Is it good wine or good wine? The scholar frowned. Mr. Ren didn't make it clear. Muse Hua scratched her head. Scholar nodded. Then prepare the wine. After all, we haven't seen each other for a long time. I reckon that those who raise pigs will bring their hands. Muse Hua, can you take out a jar of my green ant wine? Young master, is green ant wine considered good wine? Muse Hua grinned. Why, is the wine you usually give me not considered good? The scholar asked. Muse Hua was a little speechless. It's considered good wine. Then, young master, I'll go and prepare a few side dishes. Take your time to paint. The scholar nodded and then instructed, Muse Hua, just prepare a few vegetarian dishes. Otherwise, you won't feel comfortable eating too much meat. Got it. I'll go and prepare now. Muse Hua went out with a black face. Sigh. Such a stingy master made him, the errand boy, lose face. Muse Hua left. The scholar looked at his back and couldn't help but smile faintly. Muse Hua. How can life be fun if you're not stingy? Immediately, the scholar put down the folding fan in his hand and grabbed a brush with one hand. However, he didn't write immediately. Instead, he looked at the wastepaper basket. In the wastepaper basket there was still Muse Hua's graffiti. The scholar moved his mind. The graffiti that was cleaned by Muse Hua just now was unfolded. It was a piece of white paper. The ink on it was messy. It was impossible to tell what was drawn. However, the scholar's gaze froze for a moment, and then the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. Muse Hua, has your skill improved? The scholar muttered to himself. If this goes on, you'll be able to hold your own in a few years. The entire painting was filled with messy lines. There was no pattern at all. However, in the eyes of the scholar, it was completely different. In the eyes of the scholar, they were worlds. Although it's a little weak, it saves me some effort. The scholar picked up the brush and casually sketched a few strokes on the graffiti. At this moment, in the eyes of ordinary people, the painting was still messy. However, the profoundness behind it was well known. Whoosh! The scholar blew a puff of air at the painting. Looking at it again, the painting emitted mysterious light as if it were alive. Stars twinkled and colorful lights lingered. The world-listening divine brush drew the universe. Lotus Soul, I've helped you. As for whether you can come out in the end, it's up to your luck. It's been a long time since I, a scholar, personally drew a painting. You should kindly accept this good fortune. The scholar moved his mind and the painting instantly turned into light smoke. Dead Soul's star field, scattered stars zone. Sumo's magic boat stopped in the void and didn't move forward. Sumo, are we in an array? Yiwuhue asked. Yes. Sumo frowned and nodded. This array seems to have been set up not long ago. This is because the entire formation is filled with a sense of novelty, as if someone had just stirred up this world. Before we entered the scattered stars zone, everything seemed normal here. Oh! Yiwuhue was surprised. Who in the Dead Soul star field has the power to set up a rebirth level array? A rebirth level array? Sumo shook her head and smiled bitterly. If it was a rebirth level array, how could it trap me? What's more, the demonic boat's leap just now should be able to escape even if it was a peak rebirth grade array. But we didn't succeed. So this is a venerable array. Yiwuhue couldn't believe it. Yes. Sumo's eyes flashed with black light. A venerable array, and a very high-level one at that. This array is enough to trap a venerable. So it was specially prepared for us? Yiwuhue asked. It looks like it. Sumo nodded. But as you said, who has such great power? To set up such an array, it must be at least a top venerable. It might even be the legendary Lotus Scholar. Then what should we do now? Yiwuhue asked. I'll try again and see if I can return to the cave abode with the soul-storing altar. You come back first, Sumo said. Yiwuhue nodded and flew back to Sumo's sea of consciousness. Sumo stowed the demonic boat away, and then his figure flashed as he abruptly leaped to the left. Chapter 783. 49 Steps by 7. 49 Worlds by 7. When Sumo took the first step, the world in front of him changed. This made him happy, because he was out of the scattered stars zone. So, Sumo took 3 steps. That was 3 worlds, each of which was different. He quickened his pace. Sumo took 49 steps in a row, almost without any pause. Whoosh! After the 49th step, Sumo landed in the cave abode of the soul storage altar. Looking at the familiar scene in front of him, Sumo felt a little relieved. Because at least it meant that he could safely return to the cave abode of the soul storage altar. This situation was much better than when he was brought to 3 million years by the immeasurable ship. The cave abode of the soul storage altar was his last escape route. Sumo, it's good that we can come back, Yiwuhue said. Yes. Let me see if I can get out. So, Sumo moved and left the cave abode of the soul storage altar. Sumo took another 49 steps in a row. he returned to the scattered stars zone. Then, Sumo wanted to get out of the scattered stars zone, but the result was the same as before. In fact, this was within Sumo's expectations. He just wanted to give it a try. Then, Sumo drew in the void with his hands. Forbidden painting. Countless talisman seals spread out like a stream of water, and then they were continuously deduced. This was the last Dharma art that Sumo could use to escape. Space reversal. At this moment, Sumo stood on the forbidden painting and saw the layers of the forbidden painting spread out. They were extending outwards. At the same time, Sumo saw with his own eyes that there seemed to be a huge brush that was casually moving in the space created by the forbidden painting. As it moved, a complicated array was formed. The person who set up the array? Sumo looked at all of this in a daze. What kind of existence could set up an earth-shattering array with a brush? Sumo was proud of the windmill inheritance. Even now, the array formation that seventh senior sister passed on to him had benefited him immensely. The inheritance of the windwheel was like a boat rising with the tide. As Sumo's realm increased, everything about the windmill inheritance would also increase. There was no end to it. However, even so, Sumo still could not understand this venerable one's formation. The thing that set up the formation was actually a brush? Whose pen is that? Setting up a venerable level formation with a brush? Sumo could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Even when he was at his peak, he probably didn't have that kind of ability. Above the venerable realm, the person who set up the formation was most likely a lotus warrior. At this moment, Sumo had a more direct understanding of the so-called lotus scholar for the first time. Back then, if the Peacock King had fought with his full strength, he would definitely have been able to kill Sumo. And the Lotus Warrior who had set up this formation could kill Sumo with almost no effort at all. Fortunately, this formation was not a killing formation. Otherwise, Sumo would definitely die a tragic death. Countless spaces connected into a tunnel that led directly to the past and the future. In fact, Sumo could even see the evolution of the scattered stars zone in his own forbidden map. However, when he wanted to take a step forward and enter another space, he was obstructed. He could see the past and the future. However, he could not go through. An invisible force blocked him on this side. He could watch from afar, but he could not enter. Sumo shook his head helplessly. I can't get out of the space-time forbidden map either? Yiwuhue asked. Yes. Sumo nodded. Then, with a thought, he dispersed the forbidden map. At the same time, Sumo used his footwork again and took a few steps. Then, he arrived at the world where he had fought with Nine-Tailed Raccoon. In that world, Sumo released the magic boat again. In an instant, the magic boat jumped. This was the last thing Sumo could think of. However, after jumping, Sumo found that he was still in the same place. In that world, he was actually walking in circles. Sigh. At this time, Sumo finally let out a long sigh. This is an invincible trap formation. I have no other way. Ha ha. Yiwuhue laughed. It seems that the other party does not want you to go out. Then let's return to the soul storage altar. I have a feeling that the person who set up the great formation has a deep meaning. I have the same feeling, Sumo said with a sigh. Unfortunately, I still cannot understand it. Fortunately, we can still return to the soul storage altar. Then let's go back. Okay. Yiwuhue's voice had a hint of joy. And so, Sumo returned to the soul storage altar. The soul storage altar. In fact, this place gave Sumo a feeling of home. Because every time when he was in danger, he could return here. Moreover, the spirit energy here was always so thick. In fact, this place was very suitable for cultivation. Sumo landed in the front cave. Looking at the star map at the top of the cave, his expression slightly focused. The 49 brightest stars were still shining. However, Sumo did not know which world he would go to next. Life was like floating duckweed. Sumo's thoughts moved. He released Little White Pig and Black Wing God Hong. Humph humph. Little White Pig had absorbed a lot of dead soul energy in the past few days. His entire body seemed to have grown fat and round. The soul storage altar, that was a place that he dreamed of. When that fellow was released, he went straight to the back cave. Black Wing God Hong was much calmer than him. He walked proudly to the back cave. Yi Wuhui also flew out of Sumo's sea of consciousness. It seems that we will have to spend some time here, Sumo said helplessly. If our realms are not high enough, it will be very difficult for us to leave. Amen. Yi Wuhui nodded. Her eyes were full of smiles. Then everyone should cultivate well. I hope you reach the venerable realm soon. I have to cultivate well. Sumo did not pay attention to Yi Wuhui's expression. Instead, she thought of Wang Yu's words, Xiao Luo, you are too weak. Right now, he was trapped in the formation. Maybe this was a warning for him. Only cultivation could give one everything. This was something Sumo had realized a long time ago. But his realm was not high enough. In truth, Sumo needed this opportunity to tidy up and cultivate in peace. Since they could not leave, then they should start cultivating. Sumo and Yi Wuhui went straight to the back cave. The stone house, the ancient well, and the flower bed were all there. Everything was the same as before. However, after 500 years, the immortal fruits in the flower bed seemed to be a little redder. Looking again, the little white pig was actually standing in front of the flower bed like a puppy, sticking out its tongue. Its tail, which was less than 3 inches long, could actually shake lightly. That fellow looked at the immortal fruits, drooling. At the same time, it turned back to look at Sumo pitifully. He Yu Hong chose the place where he had stayed before and stood proudly on one leg. If only you were a dog. Sumo looked at the little white pig and said, that way you might be even cuter. Whoosh, just as Sumo's voice fell, the little white pig's body suddenly emitted a white light. When he looked again, a chubby white puppy appeared in front of Sumo. This caused He Yu Hong, who was far away, to turn his head. Where was the dignity of a divine beast? In order to please its master, the little white pig was trying its best. This caused Sumo to be a little stunned. Was it necessary? He was just saying it casually. However, the little white pig was thick-skinned and actually wagged its tail with all its might. However, no matter how it wagged its tail, it looked like a pig's tail to Sumo. Yi Wuhui laughed uncontrollably. Sumo quickly picked the fruits for it. Sumo was also speechless. With a wave of her hand, she directly plucked many fruits, divided them into 2 portions, and placed them in front of the little white pig and He Yu Hong respectively. You can change back. I feel that I still prefer your pig-like appearance, Sumo said helplessly. Chapter 784. The little white pig munched on the immortal fruit and turned back into a cute pig. However, he still looked up at Sumo from time to time. He chewed on the immortal fruit, and his eyes were full of flattery. The meaning in his eyes was, Master, you can have anything you want. As long as there are immortal fruits, I can change 72 forms. Sumo was speechless. Yi Wuhui snickered at the side. For some reason, Yi Wuhui liked the feeling in the soul storage altar more. Perhaps it was because this place was isolated from the world, safe and at ease. At this moment, Sumo walked to the pond where the immortal bathing ancient lotus was planted. It had been more than 500 years since the last time. In the pond, the immortal bathing ancient lotus was slender and elegant, and its fragrance spread in all directions. The white lotus was the size of a bowl, and it was crystal clear. The stamen in the middle seemed to have grown a little. However, overall, the immortal bathing ancient lotus did not change much in the past 500 years. It seemed to have reached a plateau. Sumo understood that the immortal bathing ancient lotus did not lack anything. It only lacked the last bit of his reincarnation soul energy. However, that reincarnation's soul energy could only be extracted when he became a venerable one. Counting with his fingers, half of the 3,000 years had passed. In the remaining 1,500 years, Sumo had to become a venerable one. Otherwise, the immortal bathing ancient lotus would be useless. Yi Wuhui was not worried at all. Instead, he was looking forward to it. It was good if the immortal bathing ancient lotus did not succeed. However, Sumo did not think that way. He must nurture the immortal bathing ancient lotus and forge an immortal body for Yi Wuhui. Therefore, the remaining time seemed to be a little tight for Sumo, who was trapped in the soul storage altar. However, Sumo was still confident. After all, it was not an ordinary cultivation, but a kind of awakening cultivation. After looking at the immortal bathing ancient lotus, Sumo turned around and entered the flower garden. Only Sumo could enter the flower garden of the soul storage altar. Regarding this, the little white pig had cursed in his heart countless times. After all, it felt that it had arrived before Sumo, so why could he enter while it couldn't? Of course, it also knew that it was Sumo's arrival that had revived the flower bed. Otherwise, this place would just be a flower valley filled with death. Therefore, it endured it as long as it could eat immortal fruit. Furthermore, who asked him to serve him as his master? If I suffer a loss, so be it. Sumo did not pay attention to the other immortal herbs and immortal trees in the flower bed. He was only concerned about the red spider lily at the bottom of the black cliff. Now, the bottom of the black cliff was actually a small netherworld. Black Marsh, White Island, River of Forgetfulness, and so on were all available. Perhaps, compared to the past, regardless of whether they were big or small, they only lacked the Netherlord, who was sitting on the Black Island. Within the small world, the 7 saplings were uneven. However, they seemed to have grown an inch taller. The last 2 seeds that had sprouted were now almost 2 inches tall. However, Sumo understood that if they were to grow naturally, it would take tens of thousands of years before they became flowers. The red spider lily was far older than the ancient immortal bathing ancient lotus. Right now, this red spider lily still had to rely on Sumo's final realm to mature. Looking at the red spider lily, Sumo always had a gratified smile on his face. However, this time, Sumo did not use his dermic powers to help it grow. After all, he was going to stay in this soul storage altar for a period of time. There was no rush. The condition of the 2 rare flowers was not bad. Comparatively, Sumo felt more at ease. Then, he walked out of the flower bed. Sumo, what did you plant at the bottom of the black cliff? I see that you are very concerned about it. Yi Wuhui's words were a little sour, because she could see it from Sumo's eyes. It seemed that Sumo cared more about the flowers and plants at the bottom of the black cliff. Previously, Yi Wuhui was a little curious, but he had never asked. Today was the first time he asked. Oh? Sumo said, they were my former companions of the 3 realms. I want them to be resurrected, and then fight with me to restore the Milky Way. Companions of the 3 realms. Yi Wuhui couldn't help but be surprised. Sumo, you can actually plant the reincarnators of the 3 realms? What kind of heaven-defying magic is that? Plant cultivators? That was really heaven-defying. It was much more powerful than the puppet technique. Sumo, why didn't you tell me earlier that you knew such a great magic? Yi Wuhui said, quickly tell me, who did you plant? The Demon Lord? It must be the Demon Lord. I heard that back then, you had quite a relationship with the Demon Lord and almost succeeded in possession. What nonsense is this? If I could plant the Demon Lord, why would there be a hidden world? Sumo said. It's fine if it's not the Demon Lord. You can also plant one of the other venerables. Yi Wuhui said. Ghost Lord? I can't believe you thought of planting cultivators and venerables? Sumo said impatiently. If cultivators could be planted, wouldn't they become cabbages for mortals? I didn't plant cultivators. Yi Wuhui laughed. She also felt that her idea was a bit too creative. But Sumo, didn't you say that lotus cultivators can plant lotuses? One lotus, one world, so I think it's possible to plant cultivators. I planted red spider lilies. Sumo shook her head. She didn't continue to argue with Yi Wuhui. She smiled faintly. You should have heard about this from Bu Miaotian, right? Red spider lilies? Yi Wuhui said, You're talking about the white red spider lilies, right? They bloom for 1,000 years and wilt for 1,000 years. The flowers and leaves will never meet. Love is not karma, but fate determines life and death? Yes, that's right. Sumo smiled. Grandmaster said that they were born under the feet of the dark supremacy, and that they were born before the three realms? That's right. Sumo nodded again. They once bloomed under my feet, and they accompanied me for life. In the three realms, many people call them meditation cultivators in white. So I want them to be reborn here. I planted red spider lilies. As long as I don't die, the red spider lilies will not perish. Sumo's eyes were dancing with flames. At that moment, he looked at the small world under the black cliff. He seemed to see the red spider siblings who had once fought for him. Yi Wuhui listened and nodded. She had heard of the story of the red spider lilies. Although the red spider lilies had flower bodies, they were also powerful cultivators. They had powerful dermic powers, and each had their own special abilities. The devil's flower and the red spider lilies. They were two of the greatest flowers in the three realms galaxy. Listening to Sumo's words, looking at Sumo's expression, and thinking about the story of the 7 red spider siblings, Yi Wuhui's heart was filled with longing. How delightful would it be to follow her to the ends of the world? Have they all fought side by side with you? Yi Wuhui asked. Yes. Sumo nodded, then let out a long sigh. They all died for me. Fighting for the supremacies should be an honor. Yi Wuhui looked at the small world under the black cliff. They must have no regrets. They will still follow you. Actually, I'm nothing. Fighting for the 3-star river is an honor, Sumo said slowly. In the past, I always thought that I was the one who created the 3 realms and controlled karma. What about now? Yi Wuhui asked. Now I understand that it was actually the 3 realms that gave birth to me, and I am the fundamental karma of the 3 realms. Sumo smiled. Or perhaps I really am the Lotus Soul. So, I want to fight for the 3 realms galaxy, just like the mother that gave birth to me and the earth that raised me. Chapter 785. The sun was warm. In front of the listening tower, a table was set up. The scholar, the fisherman, and the pig raiser sat around the table. Muse painting stood by the side obediently. On the table there were fish, meat, wine, and dishes. The delicacies and immortal wine looked and tasted good. Muse painting looked steadily forward. However, he was drooling in his heart. Mr. Wren's fish was his favorite immortal spiritual food. What's more, it was steamed today. Muse painting, come and sit down. Don't you like my fish the most? Mr. Wren said with a smile. Mr. Wren, it's true that Muse painting likes your fish, but I can't break the rules. There are so many of you here, how can I sit? Muse painting replied respectfully. Mr. Wren nodded when he heard that. In that case, I'll give you a fish. Coincidentally, I have one in my fish basket. Take it. Muse painting's eyes lit up when he heard that. Thank you, Mr. Wren. Looking again, Mr. Wren waved his hand. A streak of golden light flew out of the fish basket next to him. Seeing this, Muse Hua hurriedly raised her hand and put away the golden light. Fisherman, you're spoiling him a little. Aren't you afraid that he won't be able to digest your fish? The scholar looked at Mr. Wren and said, Young master, I'll share a few more times. Don't worry. Muse painting immediately said, I won't be greedy. That's right. Mr. Wren waved his hand. Muse painting, you're not needed here. Go and get your own fish to eat. But you really have to be careful. Okay. Muse Painting looked at the scholar again. The scholar nodded. Only then did the maid leave happily. Scholar, this Muse Painting is really good. After Muse Painting left, Mr. Rin said again, he's smart and sensible and talented. The scholar said, Muse Painting is okay. In a few years, he'll probably be able to take charge. His talent is indeed very high. Will you pass your world listening tower to him in the future? The butcher who reared pigs laughed. That's not up to me. The scholar shook his head. I'm only in charge of the world listening tower. It's not my property either. However, if it's my recommendation, I can consider helping you paint. However, who knows when that will happen? Mijou hasn't even traversed the various realms. She's still far from it. Mr. Rin and Butcher both nodded. Wanting to manage this world listening tower was not what ordinary people could do. She was just a little flower in a greenhouse. Have you finished your painting? Asked Mr. Rin. And the scholar smiled. The assistant drew one, and I thought it wasn't bad, so I added 2 more strokes. Why did you suddenly think of painting? Butcher asked with a frown. Could it be that something big has happened in the infinite worlds? Why do I feel that nothing good ever happens when you paint? Could it be that you're painting wind, rain, thunder, lightning, and many stars this time? Hee hee. The scholar waved his hand. Pig rearing, don't talk nonsense. You make it seem like I'm causing chaos in the infinite worlds every day. I'm someone who knows my place. Actually, this time, I was only entrusted by someone to set up an array. Mr. Rin and Butcher were stunned. Asking you to set up an array? That's a big deal. Mr. Rin smiled. Who asked you to paint? Who did you paint for? Butcher asked directly. Windmills people. The scholar smiled. Windmills people have always been on good terms with us. I can't brush them off, can I? Besides, it's just a small effort. Windmills scholar asked you for help. Butcher asked. And we're all in the same trade. The scholar smiled. My ass. Butcher said disapprovingly. In my opinion, you're all poor. None of you use literature to show off your knowledge. Actually, you're all hypocritical scholars. How can you compare to us pig rearing? Hee hee. The scholar smiled. Speaking of rearing pigs, Butcher, why do I feel that your pigs aren't as good as Boss Windmill's pigs? His pigs seem to be better reared than yours? They're all mighty and majestic. Nonsense. Butcher said angrily. My pigs are domestic pigs. I reared them to eat meat. How can his messy pigs compare to mine? I don't believe that his pork tastes better than mine. Isn't the purpose of rearing pigs for meat? Raising pigs as pets is a blasphemy to pig rearing. Ha! Mr. Rin nodded repeatedly. And seeing that Butcher was angry, the scholar picked up a pig's hand and took a bite. He smiled. That's right. In fact, the butcher's pork tastes the best. Come, let's drink. That's more like it. Butcher's anger turned into joy. The 3 of them picked up their wine bowls and drank it in one gulp. Scholar, your wine isn't that good. Mr. Rin frowned. Didn't I ask Maid Hua to tell you to prepare the wine? Really? The scholar pretended to be ignorant. Maid Hua only said to prepare the wine, but didn't say to prepare the wine? Mr. Rin was speechless. He understood that Maid Hua wouldn't be as stingy as the scholar. Angler, it's good enough that we can drink the scholar's wine. Butcher said, why don't you think about it? Who else in our village can come to the scholar's place to drink some wine and get him 2 vegetarian dishes? Nonsense. The scholar wasn't happy. Last time, when Aunt Hua came to send flowers, I asked her to stay for a meal. Mr. Ren was amused. You still have the nerve to mention Aunt Hua. She's the person that Butcher is thinking about. You still want to ask her to stay for a meal? Are you plotting something? I'm plotting something? The scholar looked at Butcher and said, Pig rearing, I've been worried about you. I'm trying to matchmake you two, and it's also because of you that I asked Aunt Hua to stay. Nonsense. Butcher drank a mouthful of wine. Do you believe what you said? The scholar was speechless. Because he really didn't believe it. Who asked Aunt Hua to be so beautiful? All the men in the village, except for Mr. Ren, probably wanted to take a second look at Aunt Hua. By the way, who is the person that windmill scholar asked you to help? Mr. Ren asked. A small cultivator. It said that he used to be the lotus soul of the three realms. The scholar said, I helped him draw the revered trapping array to help him become a venerable. The three realms. Mr. Ren couldn't help but nod and said playfully, when I was fishing, I also encountered the aura of the three realms. It seems that it's a very special world. However, it was destroyed in the process of evolution. It didn't shatter naturally. Actually, it met a purifier. The scholar said. Purifier? Mr. Ren laughed coldly. Sigh. Who cares? Butcher shouted. It's good that nothing big happened. Previously, I was worried that once the scholar started painting, there would be a bloody storm. Now I'm relieved. Come. Drink. Drink. The three of them stopped talking about the various realms. Instead, they talked about Mulberry Maiden, Aunt Hua, fishing, and pig rearing. At this moment, if a mortal passed by, he would definitely feel a sense of familiarity. Because they really didn't have any immortal intent on them. They only talked about trivial matters such as needlework and mulberry. Immortal intent, mortal intent, who could really say for sure? Who knew that the scholar's casual sketches would trap sumo for more than 1,000 years? Chapter 786. Soul Storage Altar Cave Abode. Little White Pig was playing around. Black-feathered God Hong was dozing off on one leg. Yi Wuhui stared blankly at Sumo, while Sumo sat cross-legged and cultivated. In the blink of an eye, 30 years had passed. Most of the time it was like this. Everyone's lives looked monotonous, but they each took what they needed and did not interfere with each other. Little White Pig seemed to be addicted to it ever since it turned into a little white dog. Sometimes, kittens, puppies, and even 2 little white pigs would suddenly appear in the cave abode. That guy had actually started to skillfully develop and use the cloning skill. Yi Wuhui sometimes couldn't even tell which one was the real little white pig. This made little white pig proud for a long time, playing even more happily. In the end, it dared to use a clone to provoke Black-Feathered God Hong. In the end, Black-Feathered God Hong ignored the clone and poked the little white pigs but with his long beak. Even though little white pig had thick skin, Black-Feathered God Hong still poked a deep bloody mark. A purplish-red lump appeared on the white butt, and it only faded after 3 years. From then on, little white pig was much more restrained and no longer showed off. In the blink of an eye, another 30 years passed. On this day, Sumo's body emitted a faint mysterious light. Humph humph. Little White Pig stopped playing and looked at Sumo. Black-Feathered God Hong also opened his eyes. Yi Wuhui's spirits were also lifted. After all, Sumo had been meditating for 60 years. Advancement. Little White Pig had seen this before. Previously, Sumo was in the Rebirth Realm Level 5. It seemed that she had advanced to the Rebirth Realm Level 6 this time. 60 years was not fast for Sumo. Whoosh, then, Sumo let out a turbid breath and opened her eyes. Have you reached the 6th Rebirth Realm? Yi Wuhui asked. Yes. Sumo nodded. I'm at the 6th level of the Rebirth Realm now. Then, Sumo picked some immortal fruits and gave them to the little white pig and the black-feathered deity Hong. I'll go out and take a look. All of you just wait here. With that, Sumo's figure moved and she had already left the cave. Humph. You go and have a look. Yi Wuhui hurriedly said. Humph. The little white pig heard this and immediately followed him out. This was because only the little white pig and Sumo could freely enter and exit the soul storage altar. However, an hour later, both the man and the pig returned. How is it? Yi Wuhui asked. Hee hee. Sumo shook her head and smiled bitterly. It's still the same. Although my realm has increased a little, the grand array hasn't changed at all. I come and go exactly as I did before. Humph. The little white pig also nodded at the side. Yi Wuhui nodded. It seems that I still need to continue cultivating, but I need to refine a furnace of elixirs first. This way, I can try to break through to the 7th eternal realm within 100 years. Sumo said. Sumo, can I help you with anything? Yi Wuhui asked. No need. Sumo smiled. If you can, you should solidify your soul. Unfortunately, you can't cultivate now, otherwise this would definitely be a good place. Humph. The little white pig also looked at Sumo and asked. As long as you don't make trouble, you'll be helping, Sumo said. When the little white pig heard this, he snorted in dissatisfaction. At this time, Sumo walked to the flower garden and began to pick out herbs. This time, he wanted to refine the Shengjing pill. The Shengjing pill was a top reincarnation elixir. This kind of elixir, in fact, could be considered an empty recipe, but almost no one could refine it. This was because it was only useful for cultivators below the 7th reincarnation realm, but whether a cultivator in the 7th reincarnation realm could prepare all the herbs was another matter. Even if they had the herbs, they might not have the ability to refine the elixir. Reincarnation level elixir did not mean that a reincarnation realm cultivator could refine it. However, this was not a problem for Sumo. There was almost everything in the flower garden. As for the method of refining elixirs, Sumo did not need to master it at all, because he had the hidden soul cauldron. Yi Wuhui watched Sumo pick the herbs, wondering what kind of elixir Sumo was going to refine. How to refine elixirs? He had never seen Sumo refine elixirs. When the little white pig heard that Sumo was going to refine elixirs, it was already jumping with joy. This was because the mist from refining elixirs was a great supplement for it. Not long after, Sumo finished gathering the herbs, plus some things from the cosmos sack. She had all the ingredient. Sumo, what kind of elixir are you going to refine? Yi Wuhui asked. This was because she also knew that ordinary elixirs were almost useless for reincarnation realm cultivators. Ascension elixir, Sumo said casually. Ascension elixir? Yi Wuhui heard Bu Miaotian mention this kind of elixir before. You can refine ascension elixirs? Then what level is your alchemy skills? What level? Sumo was taken aback. I don't have a level. You dare to refine ascension elixirs without a level, Yi Wuhui said. Sumo thought for a while and said, then I might be at the invincible realm. Currently, there is no elixir that I can't refine as long as I have the herbs and the elixir recipe. Invincible realm? Yi Wuhui could not help but be speechless. He looked again and saw Sumo carrying a pile of herbs directly into the stone house. The little white pig, on the other hand, was full of confidence as it followed behind Sumo. Yi Wuhui did not ask any more questions and just stared blankly. Sumo entered the stone house and took out a broken bowl from her cosmos bag. Yi Wuhui was even more stunned when he saw this. Why would she use a broken bowl to refine elixirs? But then she saw Sumo throw the broken bowl tray directly on the stove. The broken bowl instantly turned into a soul depository cauldron. It was neither too big nor too small, and it just happened to sit on the stove. The runes on it faintly flowed. Elixir cauldron? Yi Wuhui's heart skipped a beat. However, Sumo's cauldron was clearly a cauldron. It did not even have a lid. While Yi Wuhui was surprised, Sumo had already thrown all the herbs into the soul depository cauldron. This scene made Yi Wuhui dumbfounded. Of course, she knew how to refine elixirs. However, she had never seen anyone refine elixirs like Sumo. Was this the alchemy of the invincible realm? Yi Wuhui could not help but look at the little white pig who was already drooling. Humph, are you sure your master is refining elixirs? Humph. The little white pig nodded, because it was not the first time it saw such a scene. Humph! Yi Wuhui frowned and said, "But, I always feel that he seems to be cooking? Do you think he will throw you into that cauldron and stew you later?" Humph! The little white pig could not help but lower its eyelids and look at Yi Wuhui. These words were too hurtful to the pig. "Sumo, don't you use fire to refine elixirs?" Yi Wuhui asked Sumo again. "No need," Sumo said. "It will be done in a while." "It will be done in a while?" Yi Wuhui said. "I heard that one ascension pill takes 49 years to refine. Therefore, ordinary cultivators cannot refine it at all." NN. Sumo was also not in the mood to explain to Yi Wuhui. Chi-Chi, who, as the medicinal ingredients entered the cauldron, white fog continuously rose from it. The little white pig's face was filled with intoxication as its body floated along with the white fog. That kind of feeling was not to mention free and unfettered. After Sumo finished putting in all the medicinal ingredients, she directly lay down on the stone bed and did not even look at the cauldron again. Because she did not need to look at it at all, she was refining elixirs automatically. At this time, Yi Wuhui stood at the side in a daze. She only saw the white fog rising from the ancient cauldron, and there was no fire. All of this was somewhat beyond her understanding. She did not know how many hours had passed, but it was definitely less than a day. The white fog gradually dissipated and the little white pig's belly bulged. Ding ding dang dang. Inside the cauldron, the sound of metal clashing resounded. Looking again, a 5-colored elixir directly floated at the mouth of the cauldron. Brilliance radiated in all directions, illuminating the entire stone house. A top-grade ascension pill. Lianbois. At that moment, Yi Wuhui was certain. That ancient cauldron was definitely the other Lianbois on Sumo. Chapter 787. A 5-colored brilliance spread out. With a clang, the ascension pill floated in the mouth of the soul depository cauldron, while the little white pig fell on the windowsill. Because the white mist was gone, the little fellow ate until its belly bulged and almost jumped up. Suemo stood up and reached out with one hand, grabbing the ascension pill. The pill was the size of a glutinous rice ball. Among all the pills that Sumo had refined, it could be said to be the largest. Light circulated on it and it was full of spiritual energy. The power it contained was definitely incomparable to the previous pills. Humph! The little white pig looked at the pill and drooled. Unfortunately, the pill was not its food. However, the pill was too delicious. Supreme Ascension Pill? Yi Wuhui asked to confirm. That's right. Sumo looked at the pill in his hand and was very satisfied. The soul depository pill must be of the highest quality. This pill would definitely help him break through to the 7th stage of the rebirth realm. However, Sumo did not use it immediately. Instead, he kept it in his cosmos pouch. He wanted to wait until he cultivated to the point where he could break through in one go. Sumo, this ancient cauldron is also Lianbois, right? Yi Wuhui looked at the soul depository cauldron and said, "It can actually refine pills by itself?" Soul depository cauldron. Sumo pointed at the words on the soul depository cauldron. It should be Lianbois. Moreover, not only can it refine pills, it can also refine low-quality pills into high-quality ones. Amazing! Yi Wuhui praised. However, I still want to try and see if it can refine divine weapons. As she spoke, Sumo directly took out 3 fiery red flying daggers from her cosmos pouch. These flying daggers were rotating flying daggers. They were obtained from the chaotic god continent, but they were only of the deity's tribulation level. Sumo casually threw the 3 flying daggers into the soul depository cauldron. He did not have much hope. Chi-Chi. In fact, Sumo had previously tried to use the soul depository cauldron to refine a magic weapon, but she had not succeeded. This was the first time since the fusion of the soul depository cauldron. However, as soon as the flying dagger entered, smoke rose. Sumo's eyes couldn't help but light up. One had to know that he didn't have any reaction before. However, the smoke was not white but grayish-black. Humph! The little white pig frowned and left with a snort, because it didn't like the grayish-black mist anymore. Are you being picky? Sumo laughed. The little white pig looked at Sumo adorably. The black fog was not tasty. Then, it twisted its little butt and walked to the side of the ancient celestial bathing lotus to sleep soundly. It seemed that it had eaten its fill just now. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At this moment, the soul depository cauldron began to buzz. Sumo took a look and saw that the 3 flying daggers inside were long gone. Only a red light was circulating rapidly in the soul depository cauldron. However, suddenly, the soul depository cauldron seemed to be on strike and was swaying left and right. Huh! Sumo was stunned. It seems to be asking for food. Yiwuhui reminded her. Huh? It wants to eat? Sumo couldn't help but be stunned. Because in the past, the broken copper bowl did need to eat spirit stones to evolve, but later on, refining pills no longer needed spirit stones. Could it be that it needed to refine divine weapons and magic weapons again? Sumo had the mentality of giving it a try. With a wave of her hand, she threw out a supreme-grade spirit stone. The current Sumo was not the same as before. She could be said to be generous. Back then, he had been throwing out low-grade spirit stones one by one. However, this supreme-grade spirit stone was basically like a clay ox entering the sea, without a sound. However, it was indeed absorbed. It was too fast, and there was almost no trace. The soul depository cauldron was still swaying left and right, even a bit like a roly-poly doll. Huh! Sumo was stunned, then she smiled and said, Not enough? With another wave of her hand, Sumo directly threw in 100 supreme-grade spirit stones. Chi-chi, whoosh whoosh. Those supreme-grade spirit stones instantly disappeared into the soul depository cauldron. At the same time, white fog gradually rose and began to neutralize the dark gray fog. However, the soul depository cauldron was still buzzing and swaying left and right. When Sumo saw this, her face couldn't help but become serious. Because swallowing supreme-grade spirit stones like this meant that the soul depository cauldron indeed needed spirit stones. According to her previous experience, the soul depository cauldron would never swallow spirit stones for nothing. It would either upgrade or refine it. Sumo, give me more. Didn't you win a supreme-grade spirit stone mine from me? Yiwuhui said. Okay. Sumo directly threw the cosmos sack in the void. Whoosh, thousands of supreme-grade spirit stones poured down, and at that moment, it was like a waterfall of supreme-grade spirit stones. A pale yellow light shone on the entire back cave. These supreme-grade spirit stones were basically obtained from the bet between him and Guiying, who was also Yiwuhui. Later, as Sumo's cultivation level increased, he rarely used it. That mine, he couldn't bring it with him. Later, it was used for the construction of Sioux City. Chi-chi-chi, whoosh. Looking again, the soul depository cauldron shook and suddenly became as big as a basin. Its ability to swallow spirit stones also immediately increased. Thick white fog rose from the cauldron. However, it was still buzzing. There were about 20,000 supreme-grade spirit stones on Sumo. If this was a cultivator below the rebirth state, it would be a considerable amount of wealth. In less than a quarter of an hour, a total of 20,000 supreme-grade spirit stones fell into the soul depository cauldron. Then, the soul depository cauldron finally stopped buzzing. No more spirit stones fell into it, and it no longer absorbed them. Keep. Sumo's mind moved, and she put away the cosmos sack. 20,000 supreme-grade spirit stones. Sumo didn't feel bad about it. However, he wanted to see to what extent the soul depository cauldron could refine a deity's tribulation class treasure. Deity burying class? Break world class? Sumo guessed in his heart. The white fog lingered and the black gas rose again. The soul depository cauldron itself didn't change, but the red light inside it began to spin quickly. Then, it solidified bit by bit. From start to finish, the whole process lasted for 6 hours. Compared to refining elixirs, this speed was much slower. It seemed that refining a treasure was even more difficult. Humph! The little white pig closed his eyes. When he opened his eyes, he saw that Sumo was still staring at the soul depository cauldron. At that moment, all the fog began to dissipate. It seemed that he was about to succeed. Ding! There was a crisp sound inside the soul depository cauldron. When he looked again, a red light flew out. A small flying knife that was 3 inches long, with a circle in the middle and 2 ends like crescent moons, was floating in front of Sumo. Huh! Sumo frowned. The flying knife was small and exquisite, but it didn't look that special. Sumo raised her hand and held it in her palm. She spat out some spirit chi. Wow! After the spirit chi was poured into it, the flying knife emitted a sky full of light. An endless pressure spread out. Yi Wuhui's face changed. He quickly took 3 steps back. That was because the murderous pressure could hurt her. Venerable god weapon? Sumo's face suddenly changed. At the same time, she immediately locked its power. It had never occurred to Sumo and Yi Wuhui that the 3 deities' tribulation-level flying daggers they had thrown into the cave would be refined into venerable divine weapons. That was unbelievable. Before this, Sumo thought it would be good if a deity's tribulation treasure could become deity burying class or break world class. But they didn't expect the soul depository cauldron to be so overbearing. Deity's tribulation could reach venerable level. It was unimaginable and unimaginable. Compared to a venerable god weapon, 20,000 top-grade spirit stones were not worth mentioning. Sumo, I feel that after we get out of the formation, we should go straight back to the Pure Land and take back the top-grade mine. Yi Wuhui said in a daze. Yes. Sumo looked at the venerable flying knife and nodded. I think so too. Chapter 788. Venerable Level Flying Knife. The flying knife was less than 3 inches long and as thin as a cicada's wing, but it shone brightly. 3 deity tribulation magic treasures and 20,000 supreme-grade spirit stones could be made into a venerable divine weapon. It was like exchanging a piece of wood for an entire forest. Such an effect was enough to drive people crazy. Sumo hurriedly took out 2 more deity tribulation magic treasures from her cosmos bag. Now, deity tribulation magic treasures were of little value to Sumo. This time it was 2 flying swords. After he threw them in, the soul-storing altar directly turned them into 2 rays of green light, and then began to shake again. It was almost the same process as before. Alas! Sumo shook her head and looked at Yi Wudao. It seems that every sacrificial refinement requires spirit stones. Otherwise, it can't be sacrificial refined. In this case, we really have to go back and move the mines. Yi Wuhui rolled his eyes at Sumo and said, Sumo, you're greedy. A supreme-grade spirit mine can't even be exchanged for a venerable divine weapon. Do you want to use 20,000 supreme-grade spirit stones to forge countless venerable divine weapons? Actually, I really want that. Sumo sighed, then waved her hand and directly put away the soul-storing altar. She simply did not refine the deity tribulation immortal sword anymore. Because Sumo did not have many spirit stones left. It's still not perfect. Sumo sighed. Yi Wuhui was speechless. Whoever obtained this soul-storing cauldron would probably be crazy with joy, but Sumo actually said that it was not perfect. It seemed that people who had ruled a great world really had a different outlook. In fact, Sumo was just joking. Of course, he knew what kind of treasure this soul-storing cauldron was. However, without a realm, only having a divine weapon was useless. Moreover, Sumo still had some doubts in his heart. He was a little not sure that the soul-storing cauldron could be used to forge venerable divine weapons in batches. It must have some kind of restriction, but he had not discovered it yet. Otherwise, the three realms would have been flooded with venerable divine weapons. If the white-robed guardian king casually forged a divine armament, how could that be? This was the main reason why Sumo did not pursue refining divine weapons. I'm going to break through to the 7th layer rebirth realm. It may take some time. Stay in the cave and don't move around. When Sumo said this, she looked at the little white pig. Humph. The little white pig nodded sensibly. However, Sumo was still a little worried. Miss Yi, look at it. Right now, the situation of the grand formation outside was unclear. Sumo said, let's talk about everything after I advance. Yes. Okay. Yi Wuhui nodded without any interest. If you want to run around, I'll put you in my storage pouch and seal you for 1,000 years. Sumo said to the little white pig. Humph. The little white pig pouted in dissatisfaction. However, it really wanted to sneak out for a walk just now. Only then did it give up on that idea. After that, Sumo walked out of the stone house and went directly to the place where the front and back caves were connected. She sat cross-legged. Soon, Sumo entered a meditative state. That kind of meditative state was to forget oneself and everything else. Although he was in the cave, in reality, it could be considered an existence of a different world from the cave. Yi Wuhui looked at the little white pig, and the little white pig also looked at Yi Wuhui. The man and the pig looked at each other without saying anything. Finally, the little white pig walked over and lay at Yi Wuhui's feet, sleeping soundly. Yi Wuhui stared at Sumo intently. In the distance, Heiyu Shenhong stood there with his eyes closed. No one knew if he was really asleep or just pretending to sleep. The entire soul storage altar cave was very quiet. Of course, the little white pig's snores were very loud. The snores were very disproportionate to its cute appearance. As time passed, the cave was peaceful and all things grew. The hurricane lilies and immortal bathing ancient lotus grew quietly. The immortal herbs and spirit trees in the flower garden were still full of life. In the blink of an eye, 100 years had passed. In the blink of an eye, another 100 years had passed. In fact, when one cultivated to a certain level, the change in time would become a little blurred. In fact, some mighty figures had completely forgotten about time, because they had already jumped out of the fence of time. Just like Amu back then, when he left the three realms, he had actually already been able to control time. There was no sun or moon in the mountains, it was probably like that. True immortals were all detached from time. Therefore, 200 years was not a long time for both Yi Wuhui and the little white pig. During this time, Yi Wuhui spent most of his time looking at Sumo. Occasionally, she would also cultivate. However, her realm could only stop at the peak of the one-lifetime immortal realm. Her soul body couldn't be upgraded. She could only make it slightly more solid. In the end, when he was bored, Yi Wuhui began to make puppets. There was no 5-colored divine soil in the soul storage altar, but the soil, stone, and wood here were far superior. They could all be top puppet materials. Of course, those things were limited. Yi Wuhui could not make puppets, he could only make small objects and dolls. This way, he could play with the little white pig and the black feather deity, and kill time. Sumo's cultivation continued. The entire soul storage altar could provide her with an endless supply of spirit energy. This was very special. Although Sumo's cultivation technique was special, she still needed the support of spirit energy. That kind of need could be said to be endless. However, even so, Yi Wuhui did not feel that the spirit energy in the soul storage altar had thinned. The spirit energy here had always been extremely dense. Now Yi Wuhui could not see Sumo's cultivation progress. However, the entire Sumo looked very peaceful and calm. That was a good thing for cultivation. So, in the blink of an eye, another 40 years had passed. In a blink of an eye, it had been 300 years since they returned to the soul storage altar. Inside the soul storage altar, several small animals appeared. However, they were all puppets. On this day, Sumo's body once again glowed with a mysterious light, and the ascension pill directly flew out of the cosmos bag. Sumo did not open his eyes, but opened his mouth. The ascension pill flew directly into his mouth. A pill of that level melted in his mouth. In an instant, a 5-colored brilliance rose from Sumo's body. The brilliance of the ascension pill seemed to be transferred to Sumo's body. Promotion? The little white pig woke up, and the black feather deity watched from a distance. Yiwuhui looked a little nervous, because he understood that no matter what kind of cultivator, every promotion actually meant risk, even if Sumo was awakened. At this time, the space around Sumo was a little strange. However, Sumo's expression was as usual. It was just that the aura on his body was changing. At that moment, Sumo was like a sea-stabilizing needle, and below him was a vast sea. In fact, it was indeed so. At this moment, Sumo's Dan-sea was surging, and the power of the Ascension Pill was helping Sumo complete the final sprint. 6th Rebirth Realm. 6th Rebirth Realm Perfection Realm. 7th Rebirth Realm. Breakthrough. However, Sumo's realm was still increasing, approaching the 7th Rebirth Realm Perfection Realm. Chapter 789. Complete Rebirth Realm Level 7. This realm should have exceeded Sumo's expectations. However, it was impossible for him to break through to Rebirth Realm Level 8 in one go. After all, there was a huge gap between each realm of rebirth. The waves in the pill sea gradually calmed down. Sumo opened his eyes. Sumo! Yiwuhui called out, "How is it?" "Humph." The little white pig also came over. Complete Rebirth Realm Level 7. Sumo stood up and sighed softly. He should say that he was satisfied with this result. From Rebirth Realm Level 5 to Rebirth Realm Level 7 in 300 years, this was definitely a speed that many cultivators could not match. Based on this speed, there was still hope for him to reach the martial honor realm in the remaining 1,000 years. However, Sumo always felt that if he continued to cultivate like this, he seemed to have lost something. An indescribable feeling lingered in Sumo's heart. "What's wrong?" Yiwuhui asked. "Nothing." Sumo frowned and then looked at Yiwuhui. "However, I want to go into the array to take a look. Come with me." "Okay." Yiwuhui was very happy. "Humph." The little white pig leaped up. "Humph." Sumo nodded and then waved her hand to put the black feather god Hong into the cosmos sack. The little puppets made by Yiwuhui temporarily stayed in the cave abode. In any case, if there were no changes, they would return immediately. Yiwuhui moved his mind and entered Sumo's sea of consciousness. The little white pig landed on Sumo's shoulder. After all, it was an existence that could come and go freely. Whoosh! Sumo's figure moved and directly left the cave abode of the soul storage altar. By now, Sumo was already familiar with this magical footwork. In fact, he could even stay in any world he wanted. It was just that the honorable trapping formation had restricted him, preventing him from moving around freely. After 49 steps, Sumo returned to the array. Then, he summoned the demonic boat and had Yiwuhui stand on it. Nothing had changed in front of him. It was still the same scattered stars zone, empty and vacant. No matter where Sumo went, she couldn't get out. It was a maze with no exit. The little white pig's spiritual sense was extraordinary. It had also been holding its nose, trying to find a way to get out of here. However, it was also impossible. This grand formation seemed to be invulnerable and perfectly sealed. "It's still the same. It hasn't changed at all." Sumo sighed. However, that indescribable feeling from before surged up again. He had a feeling that he had overlooked something. This formation isn't harmful at all. But why does it have to trap us? Sumo looked at the grand formation and said to Yiwuhui. Yiwuhui smiled. "Didn't we talk about this before? The person who set up this grand formation doesn't want to kill you. Otherwise, it would be as easy as flipping his hand to kill you." The person who set up this formation only wants to trap you. Perhaps when you reach the honorable realm, you will naturally be able to walk out of this grand formation. Hee. Sumo shook her head. But I suddenly feel that this doesn't make sense? Oh. Why? Yi Wuhui said. Previously, we speculated that the other party's goal is to trap us. Then it might be a friend and not an enemy. But what's the point of trapping us? Sumo smiled bitterly. This is a honorable trapping formation. Sumo continued to frown. As long as I can't become a honorable realm, I might not be able to get out. That means that the other party is certain that you will become a honorable realm. Yi Wuhui smiled. That's exactly the problem, Sumo said. How does the person who set up this formation know that I will become a honorable realm? Even if I'm a samsara traveler of the three realms, the reincarnation of the underworld lord and the demon king, do I have to become a honorable realm? You have to know that among the samsara travelers of the three realms and the galaxy, how many of them are like Xing Fei, who regard reincarnation as a normal thing? Apart from Xing Fei, which one of them did not experience difficulties before awakening and continuing to cultivate? Most of them have not reached the realm they were at back in the day after hundreds of thousands of years. Isn't that right? But you are special, Yi Wuhui said. Special? Sumo smiled self-mockingly and shook her head. Actually, special is relative. I used to think that I was the one in charge of everything. But now it seems that I'm just an existence that others look down on. No one knows how many so-called supreme beings there are in the various realms. In the three realms, I am the underworld lord and the demon king. But when I came to the hidden realm, didn't someone use a pen to trap me here? Mu created the galaxy, but wasn't he also sealed in the Lazuli world? So, there's nothing special about us. As long as the world is big enough, we are all ordinary beings. Sumo's tone was a little heavy. But that was indeed how he felt at the moment. In this life, his mentality was different from that of the underworld lord and the demon king. He no longer thought that he was superior and could control everything. He was just a cultivator who strived for the top and did not want to be a puppet. Hearing Sumo's words, Yi Wuhui was speechless for a long time. Sumo was right. Because people could not always think about controlling and changing others. In this world, the only thing that they could truly control was themselves. As powerful as Bu Miaotian was, he created countless puppets and controlled many things. But what could he change? I keep feeling that there's something that I haven't understood. Sumo said. What is it? Yi Wuhui said. That's the true goal of the cultivator who set up this formation. Sumo said. Yi Wuhui was a little confused. The person who set up the formation definitely doesn't know that I can enter an incomparably mystical soul altar cave abode, right? Sumo asked. That shouldn't be a problem. Yi Wuhui smiled. After all, I don't really understand how you could have such a cave abode. Other than Guan Xiong, is there no one else who knows about this cave abode? Yes. Sumo nodded. But Guan Xiong only came here once. He doesn't know the specifics. Actually, in these 300 years, if I didn't have the soul altar cave abode, I wouldn't have been able to reach the peak of the 7th level of the rebirth realm. Because I couldn't have refined the ascension pill, nor could I have an endless supply of spiritual energy. That's right. Yi Wuhui frowned. In other words, all of this was definitely not within the consideration of the cultivator who set up the formation. Yes. Sumo nodded. But the other party was so sure that you could break the formation, or that you could reach the venerable realm and leave the formation. Yi Wuhui turned to look at Sumo and asked. Yes. Sumo also looked at Yi Wuhui, her eyes slightly brightened. That should be the case. The possibility of the person who set up the formation wanting to hurt me is very small, and he wouldn't be so bored as to randomly trap me. Therefore, there must be a deeper meaning behind this formation. Previously, I seemed to have neglected this point, and had always used the Soul Altar Cave abode as my escape route. Actually, the secret and the exit should be within the formation. That makes sense. Yi Wuhui looked around and nodded heavily. But what exactly is contained within this formation? I can't see anything. Sumo's eyes were also blank. However, within that blankness there was a kind of determination, and at this moment, suddenly, from the void, a ray of light that covered the sky suddenly flew over. It was at least 100 feet long, like a knife or a hook, and it headed straight for Sumo. Chapter 790. Guanshi Lake. Mr. Ren was fishing as usual. He wore a bamboo hat and squinted his eyes. Inside Guanshi Lake, a white lotus stood gracefully, the water rippling slightly. It was still a good day. However, it was said that the weather in this small village was clear every day, and the wind was gentle. If lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, and the wind and rain darkened the sky, then things would get serious. Mr. Ren looked at the fish bladder, then at the wooden bridge on Guanshi Lake. Today it was unusually quiet. There were few people walking around. Sang Nu, who often crossed the bridge, did not appear either. It seemed like her silkworms did not lack food. Mr. Ren looked at Bai Shan in the distance and smiled faintly. However, the smile was meaningful. No one could tell what it meant. At this moment, footsteps could be heard. The footsteps were neither fast nor slow, and they landed lightly. The person seemed to be afraid of startling the fish in Guanshi Lake. Hee. Mr. Ren did not turn around. He said loudly, "Maid Hua, it's fine. If the fish can be startled, it's not a fish that can be hooked." Maid Hua smiled and walked to Mr. Ren's side. Then, she bowed deeply. Maid Hua greets Mr. Ren. Let's dispense with the formalities. Mr. Ren smiled. Why are you looking for me? Usually, you don't come to Guanshi Lake to play. I don't know how to swim. I'm afraid of falling into the lake. Maid Hua said awkwardly, so I don't dare to come if there's nothing. Ha. Mr. Ren heard and laughed. It's fine. If you fall into the lake, I'll fish you up with a swing of my fishing rod. No. Maid Hua waved her hand. Once I enter the lake, I won't know which world I'm in. When you fish me up, I won't even know who I am. Ha. Mr. Ren nodded and joked. That makes sense. Maid Hua, you better be careful. This lake can be so greedy that it might sweep you away again. I'm not afraid as long as I'm by your side. Maid Hua said sweetly. You've guarded Guanshi Lake. How can this lake water get close to you? Hee. Mr. Ren laughed and said, So it was your young master who asked you to come here today, right? And Shi Hua smiled. My young master has something to ask of you. Oh? Does the scholar have something to ask of me? Mr. Ren couldn't help but be stunned. That magical brush of his can settle the universe, and a world can be created with one stroke. What can I do to help him? Whatever he can't do, I probably can't either. In this matter, Mr. Ren will definitely be able to help. Muse Hua smiled. My young master wants you to help keep an eye on someone. Because he can't find that person. Who is he looking for? Mr. Ren laughed. I'm indeed better than him at finding people, as long as you know which realm he is in. A lotus soul of the 3 realms, Shi Hua said. The lotus soul of 3 realms? Mr. Ren said. Where is it sealed in the glaze realm? In that case, I can't help you observe. I don't want to look for trouble. No, Shi Hua hurriedly said. The lotus soul of the 3 realms is special. Aren't there 2? My young master is looking for the other one, which is the cultivator that he trapped with the painting array a few days ago. The person that Windmill Village asked him to take care of? Mr. Ren said. Yes. Shi Hua said, 3 days ago, my young master trapped him in the painting array. But after investigating today, he couldn't find any trace of him. He got out of the array? Mr. Ren was stunned. How can that be? Shihua shook her head and said, "You know my young master's magical brush painting array. Unless the people from the few villages in Luofan town get out, how many can break the array in the various realms? What's more, the lotus soul of 3 realms hasn't reached the stage of lotus transformation. How could he escape? With that kind of cultivation, not to mention my young master, even I can trap him to death." "Then why did he disappear?" Mr. Rin said. Shihua scratched his head and said, "My young master is also surprised? He can guarantee that the lotus soul didn't get out of the array. But he can't sense his existence. So, he asked me to come to you and help take a look." This is a bit interesting." Mr. Rin nodded. "Which world is the lotus soul of 3 realms in?" "Hidden," Shihua said. "Good." Mr. Rin nodded again, then he looked at the entire observation lake. The observation lake could see the state of the myriad realms. Mr. Rin didn't make any extra movements, but just cast his eyes on a lotus in the observation lake. At that moment, Mr. Wren's eyes were a bit special, because he had a pair of special heavenly eyes. The lotus that his eyes fell on was one of the more conspicuous ones even among the many lotuses. And not far from it there was a lotus that was almost withered. "Appear!" Mr. Wren shouted softly. Whoosh! When he looked again, the water ripples under the lotus swayed slightly. In an instant, the other lotuses on the entire lake completely disappeared. The scene on the lake changed, and what was reflected was the sky full of stars. Moreover, the star map was still constantly changing. The entire lake was flowing, as if it was constantly expanding and searching in detail. A big world, a medium world, a star region, a small world. Whoosh, whoosh, finally, the scene on the lake was fixed on the broken stars zone. Any cultivator outside Luofan town would be shocked to see this scene, because only the people in a few villages in Luofan town had seen such a scene. "Is it here?" Mr. Rin asked. "Yes, it's here." Shihua said, "Young master said that he changed my graffiti into a big array. Look, where's the prototype of my ink?" On the surface of the lake, the stars were dotted, and in the broken stars zone, there was a black fog intertwining. It really was like an ink brush, randomly drawing tangled ink marks on a piece of white paper. That star region had been completely blocked by the black fog. "Shihua, your painting skills are good," Mr. Rin said. "Mr. Rin, you praise me too much," Shihua said. At this time, Mr. Wren's eyes narrowed. Looking again, the black fog on the lake dispersed layer by layer, and the images of Sumo and Yi Wuhui on the magic boat had been completely revealed. "Isn't this them?" Mr. Wren asked. "Aren't they in the big array?" Shihua was stunned. "It should be them. My young master's big array can't trap other cultivators." But before, he said that he couldn't sense the existence of the 3 realms' lotus soul. Could it be that there's something wrong with the scholar's perception? Mr. Rin said with a smile. "They are clearly in the array, and it seems that they are still worried about getting out of the array. Go back and tell your young master that he can go to the doctor of Windmill Village to have a look. That doctor is a peerless divine doctor." Shihua was speechless. However, he also saw with his own eyes that Sumo and Yi Wuhui were indeed sitting on the magic boat in the big array. "Don't talk nonsense." At this time, the scholar's voice came from behind them. "Oh!" Mr. Rin turned around. "Scholar, you actually came in person?" "There's a problem." The scholar frowned. "I can be sure that they weren't in the big array before, because I just sensed that they appeared in the big array. So, I came here to confirm it. In the past 3 days, the aura of the lotus soul only appeared for a moment and then disappeared." Mr. Wren was also stunned when he heard this. Chapter 791. Disappeared for 3 days. Whether it was the scholar or Mr. Wren, they both knew that it was definitely not a temporary disappearance, because the time of the scattered villages around White Mountain was different from the various world. One day in fallen mortal town was 100 years in the various worlds. 3 days was 300 years. The three realms Lotus Soul actually had the ability to disappear in the scholar's drawing array for 300 years. In other words, he hid for 300 years. That was somewhat unbelievable. Although he did not have the ability to leave the array, hiding for 300 years was shocking enough. Could it be that he has some secret technique? Mr. Rin looked at the scholar and said, "There should be. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense." The scholar nodded and said, "This three realms Lotus Soul is definitely not simple. Otherwise, the people of Windmill Village would not ask me to help him become a venerable. It seems that I have to test him again. Let's see how he can hide in my great array. Even I can't detect him. My great array was made for him. If he understands everything in the array, how can he become a venerable?" The scholar spread out one hand. An antique long brush was already in his hand. "Forget it, let me do it." Mr. Rin smiled. "My heaven hook is swimming in the lake, it is more convenient." "That's good." The scholar smiled, "But be careful, don't let him catch you. Otherwise, he would be going through a tribulation, and you would ruin it. If you destroy him, the people of Windmill Village will have to find me." "Don't worry." Mr. Rin smiled and nodded. Then, his wrist that was holding the fishing rod shook slightly. Whoosh, whoosh. The fishing rod shook slightly, and the fishing line rose slightly. A ray of white light suddenly lit up on the surface of the lake and directly swept towards the shattered star zone's drawing array. The brilliance of the sky came with a ray of light. Sumo's expression suddenly changed. With a thought, the demonic ship flew and barely dodged the brilliance. However, the white light actually spun around and once again headed for Sumo. At this moment, Sumo's heart moved, because he was somewhat familiar with the aura of the white light. Back then, he had been teleported by the immeasurable ship to 3 million years ago. He and Zhen Ingbu's fleet had fallen into the interstellar sky trench. At that time, a white light had directly destroyed Zhen Ingbu's flagship. The aura of this white light was exactly the same as the last time. It's the same thing. However, Sumo did not know what it was. Could it be that the great array of the broken stars field was also created by an interstellar chasm? What was the relationship between this white light and the formation? These thoughts flashed through Sumo's mind. At the same time, the demonic boat under his feet moved and dodged the white light again. However, even though Sumo was fast, the white light was faster. The demonic boat shuttled back and forth, white light crisscrossing. The maggots in one's bones were like a shadow following the body. With another thought, Sumo directly took Yuwuhue and the little white pig back into his body. In this way, he could better spread his arms and legs. Danger was everywhere. However, Sumo was wondering if she could use this white light to break the formation. However, Sumo dodged it 5 times in a row. Each time, it was within a hair's breadth. No matter how Sumo dodged, the white light was able to move freely within the formation. It did not touch the formation at all. Or perhaps, the white light could travel between the inside and outside of the formation. Crack boom! On the 6th time, the white light was even faster and more forceful. It directly swept the tail of the demonic boat. The demonic boat shook, and instantly, red flowers filled the sky. The demonic boat was a being of the Lianbo level. Ordinary attacks wouldn't be able to cause any damage to it. However, this time, Sumo discovered that there was a deep mark on the side of the boat. Even so, Sumo did not clearly see what the white light was. He only speculated that it might be a Dharma treasure. If this continued, if Sumo was not careful, he could die. Therefore, he did not dare to deal with the white light anymore. At that moment, he felt that the white light was coming for him. This was completely different from the last time. The demonic boat disappeared instantly. Whoosh! Sumo took a step forward. The position of that step was very strange. It seemed to be advancing, but it was actually retreating. In a daze, Sumo seemed to hear a surprised voice coming from the universe. However, there was no time for Sumo to think. He immediately used his mystical footwork. One step. The white light was still there. Sumo did not expect the white light to be so powerful. It could actually cross realms to track. However, Sumo did not have a way out. He could only continue to run. If he was hit by the white light, his soul would probably be destroyed. Fortunately, the white light would pause slightly every time it crossed a realm. Its speed was not as fast as Sumo. 2-step. The white light was still there. 3-step. 4-step. 5-step. 6-step. 7 steps. Back then, Nine-Tailed Raccoon had tracked Sumo through 5 realms. This time, the white light chased Sumo through 9 realms. At the 10th step, Sumo finally got rid of the white light. Sumo's figure was like a spirit of time and space. It passed through 49 realms and landed in the cave abode of the soul storage altar. Whoosh, whoosh, the moment he landed in the cave, Sumo panted and fell to the ground. His forehead was covered in cold sweat, and his back was drenched in sweat. It should be said that this was Sumo's most exhausting escape. Back then, when Nine-Tailed Raccoon was chasing after him, he was not so nervous. When he faced the Peacock King, he was also much better. That white light gave Sumo great psychological pressure. Because he did not know what kind of existence it was. The unknown often brought fear to people, and it also made people expend more effort. At this time, Sumo was like this. After a deep breath, Sumo finally calmed down. Sumo, are you okay? At this time, Yiwuhui flew out of her sea of consciousness and asked with concern. I'm fine. Sumo shook her head gently. It's just that white light was too strange. If I was still in that big array, I'm afraid I couldn't hold on for long. Is that a Dharma spell or a magic treasure? Yiwuhui asked. I can't tell. Sumo sighed. But let's take a short rest. I still have to go into that big array to take a look. The appearance of the white light means that the big array is definitely not simple. Yes. Yiwuhui nodded. Observation Lake. He disappeared. The fishing rod in Mr. Wren's hand trembled, and he retracted it. Just now, I actually tried my best to chase after him. But he got rid of the heaven hook. Amazing. He knows the lotus spell. The scholar saw everything clearly. And it's not an ordinary lotus spell. Do you know what that step technique is? Mr. Wren looked at the scholar and asked. I don't know. But, the scholar frowned. I feel that it's a bit like the legendary heaven trampling. The scholar looked at Mr. Wren and wanted to say something but stopped. Mr. Wren frowned. He knew what the scholar wanted to say, but he shook his head in the end. Impossible. If he knew that step technique, he would have already stepped over our few villages and climbed White Mountain. Who is still wandering in the various worlds? Hee hee. The scholar laughed. That's true. After all, we don't know it. But where did he go? I don't know. Mr. Wren looked at the observation lake and shook his head gently. As powerful as he was with the heaven's eye, he didn't know where Sumo was at this moment. By the lake, the scholar and Mr. Wren looked at each other speechlessly. Muse Painting was even more confused. Chapter 792. Where did Sumo go? That was the only topic of conversation between the scholar and Mr. Wren for the entire morning at Guanshi Lake. Later on, Sumo returned and appeared in the array again. This time, Mr. Wren didn't release the heaven hook. However, they still couldn't figure out where Sumo came from. After a while, Butcher came to the lakeside. Similarly, he couldn't explain why Sumo didn't come out of the array but was able to hide herself. However, he had his eyes on the little white pig on Sumo's shoulder. That pig is not bad. Butcher muttered to himself a few times. Later on, the scholar and Mr. Wren were worried that Butcher would go out of the village and bring the pig back. Sigh. Don't worry, you two. Butcher saw the worry in the scholar and Mr. Wren's eyes. Teacher loves pigs and he takes them in the right way. I won't cross the line to steal a pig. Butcher, that pig isn't a domestic pig, right? Didn't you say that pigs from the windmill lineage are all messed up? Raising a pig as a pet is a blasphemy to domestic pigs. The scholar imitated Butcher's behavior. Butcher tried to explain, that pig is different. The scholar and Mr. Wren looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh. Because in terms of rearing pigs, Boss Windmill was the best in Luo Fan Town. However, Butcher refused to accept it. The dragon elephant soul-devouring beast was a strange breed, mainly because it was cute, so Butcher was tempted. However, as he said, he would never cross the line to steal a pig. The three of them looked at Guan Lake again. After a full hour, they only saw Sumo sitting cross-legged in the array, not moving at all. Scholar, has he started to understand the profoundness of your array? Mr. Wren asked. Not necessarily, the scholar said. However, he should have felt something unusual. One had to know that he hadn't cultivated within the grand formation for the past 3 days. Now that he was staying in the array, it meant that something was wrong. I'm ashamed to say this, but to a certain extent, he can come and go as he pleases in my painting array. Mr. Wren shook his head with a smile. Actually, he must not come out of the formation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have appeared in the formation so many times. Actually, you can go to the Windmill Village tomorrow. Ask them. Maybe the people from Windmill can give you an explanation. The scholar nodded. This idea isn't bad. I'll go to the windmill to meet that scholar again, and then we'll have another bet. What do you guys say? Upon hearing that the scholar wanted to gamble, Mr. Wren and Butcher's expressions changed drastically. Scholar, if we are talking about poetry, singing, and dancing, that windmill scholar might not be a match for you. However, in terms of gambling skills, you are no match for him. Forget about our village, even in the entire Luo Fan town. Have you heard of anyone who won a bet against him? Butcher said. Scholar Du's gambling skills are invincible. Mr. Wren smiled. Scholar, you guys have gambled several times for the name Scholar. Which time didn't you lose? When you leave our village, don't forget your name. Fake Scholar? It doesn't matter. The fake scholar is Scholar Jia, the scholar said with a smile. To begin with, my surname is Jia. What does it matter? Poor scholar, stingy scholar, fake scholar. Butcher counted with his fingers. We're afraid of calling you wrong, so we can only call you Scholar now. What I'm afraid of is that Scholar Du's next bet is for you to replace the word scholar with the word scholar. If you don't have a name, you'll be in trouble. It's impossible for me to be in trouble, the scholar said confidently. It's even more impossible for me to lose the word scholar. Oh! Mr. Wren and Butcher were stunned, then said in unison, You have a way to deal with Scholar Du. Yes, the scholar said. What way? Butcher asked. The scholar opened the folding fan in his hand, then pretended to sneer. If I don't use the word scholar as a bet, how can I be in trouble? Mr. Wren. Butcher. Muse, let's go. The scholar put on a noble look again. The one fishing, pay more attention to the painting array. If there's anything wrong with the 3 realms Lotus Soul, tell me. Tomorrow I'll go to the windmill. Muse held back her laughter, bowed to Mr. Wren and Butcher, then followed the scholar's footsteps. If he goes to the windmill to gamble, he'll definitely lose again. Butcher sighed. Mr. Wren looked at the scholar's back and said meaningfully, Actually, losing isn't necessarily a pleasure. I forgot to mention just now. Actually, he can go to the Galaxy Village in the north to take a look. The people there will definitely understand the 3 realms Lotus Soul better. But it's a forbidden village, Butcher said. Mr. Wren sneered. Forbidden village or not, it's relative. If the scholar wants to go, there must be a way. After all, he has the divine brush in his hand. When Butcher heard this, the corners of his mouth curled up, and he slowly nodded. However, he definitely did not dare to go to the Galaxy Village. It was said that there were many lunatics living in the Galaxy Village. Broken Star Zone inside the array. In the blink of an eye, it had been 30 years since the last time he met the white light. Back then, when the white light chased after him, Sumo returned to the Soul Storage Altar Cave abode. However, he only rested for 7 days before returning to the array. The white light was long gone and never appeared again. Sumo would rather believe that it was a coincidence. Otherwise, it would not be a good thing to be targeted by that white light. Therefore, Sumo enlarged the demonic boat, turning it into a black ark that was dozens of feet long and wide, and then set up an enchantment. Yiwuhui and the little white pig both appeared on the demonic boat. They were all very happy to move, while the black feather deity preferred to sleep in the cosmos sack. Day and night, Sumo cultivated on the demonic boat, and at the same time, he was observing the array. In the first 3 years of cultivation, Sumo did not find anything unusual. However, gradually, Sumo felt that the spiritual energy in the array was not inferior to the Soul Storage Altar Cave abode at all. However, the spiritual energy in the Soul Storage Altar Cave abode was extremely uniform. However, the place with the densest spiritual energy in the array was always the area where he was. There seemed to be a spiritual energy array I here. If he moved, the spiritual energy array I would move with him. The entire array seemed to move in response to Sumo's movements. Sumo, this array is so strange. Yiwuhui also discovered the abnormality. That's right. Sumo frowned and looked around. In fact, he could not see the so-called array at all. However, he could feel everything. The person who set up the array gathered countless spiritual energy through this array. This array has the same effect as the Soul Storage Altar Cave abode. However, this array seems to be operating completely for you. Yiwuhui looked at the slightly distorted space around Sumo. The spiritual energy around you is far superior to other places. This great array formation seems to be drawing in vast universes' spiritual energy for you to use. Chapter 793. The Eye of the Spiritual Energy Array. Sumo had indeed felt it. The place where he had been sitting for the past 30 years was surrounded by spiritual energy. It was as if he was cultivating on a spiritual energy fountain, with endless spiritual energy. Is this the secret of the array? Sumo frowned. The person who set up this array wants me to cultivate with it? Most likely. Yiwuhui said with a smile. This can explain why we are trapped in the formation and can't get out. Sumo smiled cautiously. I hope so. At this time, Mr. Wren and Butcher were still looking at Sumo. Fishing, the 3-realm Lotus Soul seems to have seen some clues. He is already cultivating with the help of the array. In this way, he will be able to become a venerable in less than 10,000 years. Butcher said. More or less. Mr. Wren nodded, but in the end it still depends on the Lotus Soul's understanding of the array. You have to know that the array is not as simple as assisting in cultivation. Everything depends on his luck. Butcher nodded. 10,000 years. If Suemo were to hear this, he would probably spit out blood. In fact, to reach the Venerable Realm from the 7th level of Rebirth Realm in 10,000 years was something that countless Rebirth Realm cultivators did not even dare to dream of. However, it was indeed a bit long for Sumo. Because if he wanted the immortal bathing ancient lotus to mature, he had to become a venerable within 1,000 years. Otherwise, the lotus would be meaningless. Time flew, and another 100 years passed in the blink of an eye. On the demonic boat, Sumo finally broke through again. The 8th level of Eternal Realm. There were only 1,000 years left before the immortal bathing ancient lotus had to mature. In fact, it was 1,000 years, and the few odd years were negligible. Sumo opened his eyes again. In this array, He only broke through the 8th level of Rebirth Realm after 130 years. This speed was not fast for Sumo, and was even a bit slow. After all, when he was sitting in the array, he was already at the 7th level of Rebirth Realm. There were still 2 mountains in front of Sumo that needed to be crossed. 9 levels of Rebirth Realm, and the peak of Rebirth Realm. Sumo was once a venerable one, so he knew very well how difficult it was to cross these 2 mountains. This was especially so for the peak of the Rebirth Realm. It seemed like it was only a step away from the Venerable Realm. However, that one line was a world of difference. There was a qualitative difference between the Rebirth Realm and the Rebirth Realm. All those years ago, the legendary prodigy of the 3 realms, Bumiaotian, had spent an immeasurable amount of time to cross that line. From this, one could see how tall the mountain was and how difficult it was to climb it. Phew, Sumo exhaled heavily. 8 levels of rebirth? Yiwuhue asked. Sumo nodded. It must be very difficult to reach the peak of the 9 levels of rebirth. Yiwuhue said. There are still 1,000 years. Sumo smiled faintly. I will do my best. Haste makes waste. Yiwuhue smiled sweetly at Sumo. Sumo, it's alright if you can't let the immortal bathing ancient lotus ripen. Actually, I'm already used to being a soul. It's best if I can become a venerable within 1,000 years, but if I can't, then don't force it. As long as my realm increases, it doesn't matter if it's earlier or later. There must be another way with my immortal body. Sumo nodded and smiled. Don't worry, I will weigh the pros and cons. If I can't let the immortal bathing ancient lotus ripen this time, I will definitely help you forge an immortal body in the future. Without an immortal body, I will stay in your sea of consciousness and not leave. Yiwuhue smiled. You have to protect me. No problem. Sumo nodded. Yiwuhue was stunned at first, but then he smiled and nodded. However, he understood that Sumo nodded so confidently because she had great confidence in becoming a venerable within 1,000 years. Pills can't be used anymore, right? Yiwuhue asked. Yes. Sumo smiled. The Ascension pill is already a top-notch pill. Above the 7th level of rebirth, there are basically no more pills that can be used. It is impossible to become a venerable by relying on pills. Then, what are the conditions to become a venerable? Yiwuhue asked. Back then, although she had accompanied Bu Miaotian to travel around Tibet, she didn't know much about becoming a venerable. After all, she was still thousands of miles away from becoming a venerable. Become a venerable? Sumo narrowed her eyes when she heard Yiwuhue's question. He looked at the vast starry sky, and his thoughts were boundless. Because he was born to be a venerable, he had experienced many tribulations in the 3 realms. However, every time he became a venerable, it could only be considered a kind of awakening. Therefore, most of the time, Sumo really didn't think about what was needed to become a venerable. He wasn't an ordinary cultivator. Therefore, Sumo finally smiled and said, Actually, I really don't know what is needed to become a venerable. Of course, cultivation is a must. However, becoming a venerable is a wonderful process. Becoming a venerable is not just a kind of power, but a kind of enlightenment, a kind of state of mind, a kind of perfection. Sumo said thoughtfully, I'm more willing to understand that becoming a venerable is a process that can only be encountered and not sought. Let nature take its course, and success will follow naturally. Let nature take its course, and success will follow naturally. Yiwuhue pondered over these words and smiled knowingly. Sumo, you know this. Then all the more you don't have to be anxious. Oh! Sumo then understood that Yiwuhue was still trying to persuade her. She couldn't help but smile and say, Don't worry. I will definitely be fine. Yiwuhue nodded. Then, Sumo closed her eyes again. The entire array was still in operation. Sumo was still surrounded by countless spiritual forces. Yi Wuhui looked at Sumo, who was cultivating, with complicated feelings. Once this man becomes a venerable, he will most likely leave me, right? Yi Wuhui smiled sadly. Although after Sumo becomes a venerable, she would refine an ancient lotus to make it into her immortal body, but compared to having an immortal body, she was more willing to stay by Sumo's side. As he thought about it, Yi Wuhui actually fell asleep on the demonic boat. Sumo went into meditation, and the demonic boat was silent. Little White Pig was also lying beside Yi Wuhui, snoring loudly. In the blink of an eye, another 200 years passed. In these 200 years, everything was stable. If one looked at it from the outside, it seemed that nothing had changed. Beside the goddess lake, Mr. Wren was fishing. The scholar was here again. However, when he looked at Sumo, who was cultivating, he couldn't help but shake his head. He still hasn't understood my array despite cultivating like this. Hee. Mr. Wren laughed. It seems that until the end, he won't be able to understand your good intentions. Scholar, why don't you make a trip to the wind wheel the other day? Cough, cough. The scholar coughed lightly. The wind wheel cultivators also don't know what secret technique the three realms lotus soul has to hide in the array. In the wind wheel's tribulation, that lotus soul is their little junior brother. Oh right, his name is Sumo. Oh, little junior brother? Mr. Wren paused. Since it's little junior brother, didn't Bai Yifeng teach him the method to break the array? Why can't he come out of the array? Oh! The scholar was dissatisfied. Angler, from what you said, that Bai Yifeng's array attainments are definitely above mine? Her little junior brother can break through my formation? Of course. Young Master Wren chuckled. Her attainments in array formations are definitely above yours. It's just that she can't set up the array as freely as you can. The scholar sneered. Angler, you're valuing a lover over a friend. That Miss Bai is of course good in your eyes. A touch of gentleness flashed past Mr. Wren's eyes. She is indeed good in everything. Unfortunately, the falling flowers yearn for love, but the heartless water flows on. Mr. Wren heaved a long sigh. The scholar took a look at Mr. Wren and didn't mention Bai Yifeng again. Sumo is good at wind wheel cultivation, but his realm is not high enough, so he can't come out of the array. But Scholar Du said that his little junior brother will definitely be able to come out of the array, and it won't take too long. Otherwise, he's willing to lose to me once. Mr. Wren nodded and changed the topic. Scholar, you've lost the bet again. Huh! The scholar said awkwardly, in future, please call me Little Scholar. Chapter 794. There were still 800 years before the immortal bathing ancient lotus had to mature. Sumo opened his eyes again on the demonic boat. He was still at the 8th level of the eternal realm, and there was still a long way to go before he reached the perfected level. Although the spiritual energy in the formation was abundant, Sumo's cultivation seemed to have reached a bottleneck. There were many bottlenecks on the path of cultivation. However, Sumo had never encountered one before. This time, his bottleneck came at a bad time. His absorption of spiritual energy seemed to have slowed down. Sumo stood up and looked at the formation. At this time, Yi Wuhui and the little white pig were sleeping soundly. Companionship was the longest confession of love. Sumo understood the meaning of Yi Wuhui's companionship. It was definitely not for a celestial body. However, Sumo could only give her a celestial body. Therefore, Sumo had to become a venerable one in the remaining 800 years. Whoosh! Sumo's figure moved, and he was already out of the demonic boat's boundary. This was the first time he walked out of the demonic boat's boundary after cultivating in the formation for more than 300 years. Sumo walked in the direction of the Pure Land starfield. He wanted to try and see if he could walk out of the formation now. However, the result disappointed him. because he had inexplicably returned to the side of the demonic boat's boundary after walking for a short while. Sumo sighed in his heart. However, his heart suddenly skipped a beat, because he suddenly realized that the time he took to return seemed to have shortened. It was not like this before. So, Sumo walked in another direction. Soon, Sumo returned to the same place. The time he used was almost the same as before. Now, the demonic boat was the center of the formation, and the formation had become smaller. This discovery shook Sumo to his core. Because this was the first time he felt a change in the formation after being trapped in the formation for more than 600 years. And this change should have happened in the 300 years he cultivated in the formation. That meant that his cultivation had caused the formation to change. Sumo stood in the middle of the array and narrowed her eyes. It seemed that not only could this great array draw in the power of vast universe, but it was also a condensed form of strength. In other words, the spiritual energy that Sumo absorbed actually came from two sources: vast universe and the array itself. An idea flashed through Sumo's mind. In that case, breaking the formation meant digesting the entire formation. Sumo's heart was suddenly enlightened. He finally understood this array. It wasn't trying to trap Sumo. There were two purposes for its existence. One was to capture vast universe's spiritual energy, and the other was to allow Sumo to swallow itself. This was all to help Sumo in her cultivation. Unfortunately, before this, Sumo did not realize. He had always been relying on the spiritual chi of the formation to cultivate, but he had never had any ideas about the formation itself. Previously, he had only been thinking about how to get out of the array. However, none of the methods and secret techniques he was familiar with could achieve this. Now, he understood that he could only leave the great devouring formation. However, how could it be easy to devour the formation? In fact, Sumo knew countless spells. However, he had to choose the most suitable method for the devouring formation. He wanted to maintain a balance. Not only did he have to maintain the great array formation's ability to gather the vast universe's spiritual energy, but he also had to slowly swallow it up. Sumo frowned for a long time before revealing a smile. Then, Sumo returned to the demonic ark and sat cross-legged in the middle. Her hands began to draw in the air. Seal. However, this time, Sumo did not deduce the reincarnation of time and space. Instead, he deduced a forbidden diagram on the east, south, west, and north sides of the demonic boat. Wood, fire, metal, and water forbidden diagrams, while the earth forbidden diagram was set up on the demonic boat. 5 elements forbidden diagram. Actually, this was the most basic change for a forbidden painting technique. As soon as the 5 elements forbidden diagram was formed, it resonated. A mysterious light immediately connected them, and they started deducing continuously. Sumo was going to set up a formation with the forbidden painting. Observation Lake. Scholar, what do you think? At this moment, the scholar hadn't left yet. Young Master Ren reminded him. That is. The scholar frowned. A forbidden painting technique? Yes. Mr. Ren said, it looks like it. You should know that the so-called forbidden painting is a secret technique unique to the 3 realms. Other than the 3 realms galaxy, the other worlds only have seals, not forbidden paintings. These seals are somewhat similar to the diagrams outside the galaxy village, the scholar said. Speaking of the galaxy village, I even told Butcher that you should go there to take a look. After all, that Sumo came from the galaxy village. If you can go there and ask around, you will definitely gain a lot, Mr. Ren said with a smile. Go to the galaxy village? The scholar immediately shook his head. I don't dare to go there. The galaxy village is known as the #1 forbidden village in Luofan town. If I go there for no reason, wouldn't I be courting death? What do you mean courting death? Mr. Ren asked with a smile. It has Phalian on the outside and forbidden paintings on the inside. I can't go in or out, but you want me to go in? The scholar smiled bitterly. Why don't you let me go to Izonglay's world to save the sealed three realms lotus soul? Hee. You won't be able to save that sealed lotus soul. Moreover, it's not your turn to save it. Mr. Rin laughed. But I know that you can still enter the galaxy village. Hee. The scholar shook his head. Forget it, I still want to live the life of a mortal. I don't want to participate in the War of the Realms. This time, if not for Windmill's request, I wouldn't want to meddle in this matter. I only wish for that sumo to break the array as soon as possible and become a venerable. I would be considered a merit point. Mr. Rin listened to the scholar's words and smiled. Scholar, Mr. Rin stopped smiling and said with a heavy tone, if the heavens really change, can our East Fence village stay out of it? Hearing Mr. Wren's tone, the scholar was slightly startled and sighed. Mr. Wren, when the nest is overturned, how can the eggs remain intact? Mr. Wren nodded and smiled helplessly. Scholar, actually you and I both understand. We're just here to steal a few days of leisure. Hee. The scholar regained his composure and smiled. As a fisherman, 1 day of stealing is 1 day of leisure. Drinking wine in the East Fence village, we enjoy the pleasures of the mortal world. When the heavens change, we'll talk about it again. Hee, you're right. Mr. Wren also smiled. At the same time, Mr. Wren looked at the lake. At this time, Sumo's forbidden map was no longer just the 5 elements map. On the demonic boat there was a round wheel. Sumo sat on it. Half of the round wheel was black and the other half was white. There were a total of 9 scales on it, faintly emitting light. At the same time, on the 4 directions of the demonic boat, there was a similar wheel. However, they were slightly smaller. Wheel array. That's the 3-realm roulette. The scholar's lips curled into a smile. It looks like Sumo has seen through my array. Could it be that he wants to dissolve my formation by using the 3 realms roulette? Most likely. It seems that he has been taught by Bai Yifeng. Otherwise, he wouldn't have set up an array in an array. Using an array to fuse with an array is a supreme technique, Mr. Rin said. The 3 realms lotus soul is indeed extraordinary. In this way, he will definitely become a supremacy in 3,000 years. The scholar nodded. In the remnant star zone inside the array. Sumo's array was an innovation, the 3 realms forbidden map and the wind wheel array. Whoosh, when he looked again, waves suddenly rose on all 4 sides of the demonic ship. Thousands of spiritual forces were like tides. They glowed with 5-colored light and hovered above Sumo's head. Spirit open. Heaven devouring. Sumo conjured a seal. He had to break through his bottleneck. At this time, he set off huge waves in his core sea. At the same time, a wheel appeared on top of his head. The surging spiritual power was filtered by the wheel and began to pour directly into Sumo's core sea. Chapter 795. If Sumo was cultivating in the spiritual spring before, then he was cultivating in the spiritual sea now. There was a spiritual sea inside, a spiritual sea outside, and a roulette above and below. Sumo was sitting cross-legged on the demonic boat. At this moment, he had returned to his beautiful appearance in white, because he had completely opened all the restraint. His white clothes were like snow, and his long hair was flying in the wind. 5-colored spiritual light, and the illusory sea floated. At that moment, it was as if all the power of the entire vast universe was pouring into Sumo. He was like a lotus. Whoosh, whoosh. There was even the sound of tides coming from all sides of the demonic boat. On the demonic boat, Yi Wuhui finally woke up. The little white pig was also looking around blankly. What's going on? Yi Wuhui couldn't help but look at the little white pig and ask. At this moment, she felt that she was in the sea of spiritual power, and the barrier of the demonic boat was like a 5-colored crystal ball in the depths of the sea. Humph! The little white pig shook his head in a daze. He didn't know anything. Just like Yi Wuhui, he slept, and then he became what he was now. Fortunately, Sumo was as steady as a mountain, and his expression was calm. The roulette above his head and under his seat were constantly spinning. That made Yi Wuhui feel a little more at ease. It seemed that Sumo seemed to have found the true use of this array. At this moment, she looked into the distance and could no longer see the so-called broken star zone. The entire array had undergone a qualitative change. Yi Wuhui didn't know how Sumo did it, but she saw the many forbidden maps around her. The forbidden maps were an array. They must have been set up by Sumo. It seems that Sumo has a chance to become a venerable one. Yi Wuhui sighed softly, and his expression was a little complicated. Unfortunately, the little white pig didn't understand what she was thinking. Wasn't it good for his master to become a venerable one? So, Yi Wuhui also began to sit cross-legged. She didn't want to improve her cultivation, but to stabilize her mind. The little white pig began to sleep soundly next to her. Time flies, not caring about the years. In the blink of an eye, 500 years had passed. Other than the flowing light array, everything else seemed to be still. Sumo was cultivating, Yi Wuhui was meditating, and the little white pig was sleeping soundly. At this moment, if someone were to see this scene, they would definitely find it interesting. At the lakeside, Mr. Ren had a faint smile on his face while the scholar was a little shocked. It was only 5 days. Scholar was just passing by and decided to take a look. However, he did not expect Sumo to have already broken through the 9-stage rebirth realm and was approaching the peak of the rebirth realm. The lotus soul of the 3 realms is a monster of the myriad worlds. The scholar didn't dare to believe it. If that's the case, he might become a paragon tomorrow. My mission is considered complete. Mr. Rin nodded in agreement. Whether it was AMU or Sumo, both of them were indeed existences that shocked the world. There were many worlds, many lotus souls, and they were also the outstanding ones. Now, the scholar's array had shrunk to a radius of only a few hundred feet. From the perspective of the scholar and Mr. Rin, it really looked like a 5-colored crystal ball. In the blink of an eye, another 100 years passed. The demonic boat had shrunk to a radius of a few hundred feet. The entire array was also only a radius of 500 feet. Sumo was still cultivating and did not move. The peak of the 9-stage rebirth realm. At this moment, Sumo's body was rippling with endless divine light. Between the wheels, he was like a god. Yi Wuhui slowly opened her eyes. She did not meditate, but just closed her eyes to rest. However, at this moment, she felt that Sumo seemed to be acting strangely, so she instinctively opened her eyes. Yi Wuhui looked at Sumo. Sumo's white clothes seemed to be whiter. Sumo's long hair seemed to be longer. More importantly, she felt that Sumo's temperament had changed. It was different from the previous Sumo. At this moment, Yi Wuhui could not see Sumo's realm at all. She only felt that Sumo was like a tall mountain that she had to look up to. She had once felt this kind of feeling from her patriarch Bumiaotian. Was Sumo going to become a venerable? Yi Wuhui bit her lower lip. Around the demonic boat, tides surged. Suddenly, the entire demonic boat shook. Yi Wuhui's expression changed, and the little white pig also woke up. Looking again, the 5-colored light array outside the demonic boat suddenly shrunk. There were a total of 6 wheels in the entire space. They all began to spin rapidly and crazily, which was completely different from the situation before. An extremely strong sense of oppression whizzed over. Whoosh! The demonic boat shrunk again, and was now less than a radius of 5 feet. If they were surrounded by an ocean before, they were now facing a tsunami. The demonic boat shook and undulated, like a small boat in the vast universe. Yi Wuhui and the little white pig could no longer stand on the demonic boat. The demonic boat's barrier seemed to be unable to stop the whistling spirit energy. The 4 roulette wheels on the outside were all moving towards the center. The barrier was about to break. At this moment, it was impossible for Yi Wuhui to return to Sumo's sea of consciousness. The space around Sumo was completely surrounded by spirit energy. The time and space there seemed to be changing. Sumo had become a blurry shadow in Yi Wuhui's eyes. Yi Wuhui could not explain the current situation, because it was completely beyond her understanding. Humph! Fear appeared in the little white pig's eyes. Humph! Yi Wuhui flew straight toward the little white pig. She still wanted to save the little white pig. However, the little white pig's body shook. Whoosh! In an instant, it transformed into the original form of the Dracophant soul-devouring beast. Its fangs were like spears, and its back was like a mountain. The Dracophant soul-devouring beast's body almost filled the entire barrier. Black gas surged under its feet, and at the same time, it spread its wings to protect Yi Wuhui. One had to know that Yi Wuhui was an extremely fragile soul. The current Dracophant soul-devouring beast was comparable to the rebirth state, and its physical body was extremely strong. Therefore, it had no problem temporarily protecting Yi Wuhui. Roar! The Dracophant soul-devouring beast roared at the sky at Sumo. However, the current Sumo could no longer hear anything outside, because it had reached the most crucial moment of breaking through to the supremacy state. Sumo wanted to swallow the entire formation. The formation was also absorbing the power of Haoyu for Sumo. That was why the current situation was happening. If not for the demonic boat, even the Dracophant soul-devouring beast would be crushed by such power. Buzz, buzz, the demonic boat shook. If it was not a Lianbo-level existence, it would have been crushed by now. The Dracophant soul-devouring beast protected Yi Wuhui and tried to stay as far away from Sumo as possible. However, the space was limited, and they could only stay 3 to 4 feet away from Sumo. Boom, crack, all of a sudden, a corner of the barrier shattered. The wheel on the east side had already flown straight towards Sumo, and then directly melted into the wheel beneath Sumo. All of this was just the beginning. With a loud bang, the enchantment completely shattered, and the remaining 3 roulettes flew in. The Dracophant soul-devouring beast was almost sucked into the whirlpool of power with Yi Wuhui. Roar! At that moment, the Dracophant soul-devouring beast had no other choice. It grabbed Yi Wuhui with its front claws, and then suddenly charged in a strange direction. One had to know that Sumo's footwork was its inheritance. Boom! The Dracophant soul-devouring beast had already gone to another world. The moment it disappeared, the entire formation completely collapsed. The wheel above Sumo's head and beneath her shone brightly, and then suddenly merged into one. Venerated transformation! Sumo's shout echoed throughout the entire star field. Chapter 796. If someone looked at the vast universe, they would find that a black hole had appeared between the Pure Land and the Dead Souls star field. It was a true black hole. The scattered stars' star zone no longer existed. All the stars and dust within a radius of millions of miles had been swallowed by the black hole. Even light could not pass through the black hole. However, at this moment, a beautiful cultivator in white was sitting cross-legged in the black hole. Black hole, white dress. The scene looked extremely strange. But it really happened. Sumo was like a Buddha embedded in the black hole. Her white dress fluttered, her long hair fluttered, and she was as beautiful as a demon. Following the shout of venerable transformation, Sumo's body suddenly shot out a light that made the black hole tremble. The dazzling white light directly annihilated the black hole. Suddenly, Sumo opened her eyes. Light shot out in all directions like a burning star. 2 rays of divine light surrounded the vast universe. The black hole instantly shattered. In the entire void there seemed to be only Sumo. This part of the world belonged to her. Venerable. Even in a hidden world, a venerable was a top existence. Dead Soul's star field. Wang Yu had just swallowed the dead spirit energy of a star and let out a long breath. Peak rebirth realm. She had finally achieved her goal. However, at this moment, she suddenly felt the aura of a venerable. That aura came from the direction of the Pure Land star field. That was the aura of a venerable, released in an instant. Usually, such an aura would only appear when one became a venerable. Someone became a venerable? Wang Yu raised her eyebrows. Someone became a venerable in the Pure Land star field? Wang Yu did not dare to believe it and wanted to investigate. However, just as she thought about it, the aura of a venerable disappeared. Huh! Wang Yu could not help but be startled. That meant that the venerable instantly disappeared from the world she was in. So powerful! Wang Yu muttered to herself. At the same time, she was somewhat puzzled. Under normal circumstances, a venerable would not leave immediately. However, she did not expect that person to be Sumo. After all, in less than 1,000 years, even if Sumo was an awakened, it was not very likely for her to become a venerable one. At this time, Sumo had already put away the magic boat and left the Broken Star Zone. Sumo became a venerable one, but he discovered that everything around him had changed. The magic boat was still there, but the little white pig and Yi Wuhui were gone. Sumo's first thought was that they had returned to the soul storage altar. Since the little white pig would definitely be able to bring Yi Wuhui back, Sumo headed straight for the soul storage altar. The Exalt realm was a realm Sumo was very familiar with. Therefore, Sumo didn't feel uncomfortable at all. However, he was stronger. When he used that mysterious footwork, he was even more skillful and at ease. In just a few moments, he had returned to the soul storage altar. This speed was far faster than before. In the front of the cave, Sumo appeared. Sumo, humph. Yi Wuhui and the little white pig pounced on her. The human and the pig had actually just returned to the soul storage altar not long ago. Suemo was just one step behind them. As expected, you came back first. Sumo smiled. Yi Wuhui controlled his emotions, then deliberately said with a straight face, "This time, it's all thanks to him. If it didn't bring me back, I probably wouldn't have been able to come back. This time, I didn't think it through." Sumo was a little embarrassed. "But, you did well this time," Sumo said to the little white pig, then moved to the back of the cave. With another wave of her hand, she directly picked a pile of immortal fruit. The little white pig cheered and ate happily. "Sumo, you became a venerable one?" Yi Wuhui followed to the back of the cave and asked softly. Sumo smiled. "Everything is just right. The immortal bathing ancient lotus should wither in a few years. My reincarnation soul chi is ready." Yi Wuhui forced a smile and nodded. At this time, Sumo had already walked in front of the immortal bathing ancient lotus. Then, Sumo stretched out the middle and index fingers of her right hand, and a green light directly poured into the immortal bathing ancient lotus. That was the reincarnation soul chi that Sumo left behind after her advancement. Mortal chi, immortal chi, and reincarnation chi, the three soul chi were gathered. Whoosh, whoosh, looking again, the pond water rippled slightly, and the immortal bathing ancient lotus swayed gently. In an instant, the white lotus completely bloomed, and the seed pod inside grew even faster. The seed pod gave birth to a child. Of course, the immortal bathing ancient lotus would continue to grow. Right now, Sumo only needed that lotus. The falling petals were already in Sumo's hand. There were a total of 9 lotus petals. Li Beihan had said clearly that one of them could be used to refine Yi Wuhui's body. Now that Sumo had 9 lotus petals in her hand, it was enough. Sumo patted her bag of holding. Whoosh, the ghostly figure appeared again. This ghostly figure could actually be used by Yi Wuhui to attach his soul to it. But after attaching his soul, he would be like a mortal without any magic power. But with it, he could save a lot of trouble. "Miss Yi, I will first merge the lotus petals into this puppet. Then, you can merge your soul into it. Everything should be ready," Sumo said. Yi Wuhui smiled faintly. "Alright." Looking again, Sumo patted her bag of holding again. She actually took out the soul depository altar first. Then, he threw a lotus petal into the cauldron. At the same time, Sumo's hands quickly formed a seal. That seal was a nether art. In reality, forging a physical body was not difficult for Sumo. It was just that what Yi Wuhui's body needed was special. He took out the soul depository cauldron in hopes that it could strengthen his physical body, like a finished pill. If it could not, it would not have any effect. Looking again, following Sumo's seal, the lotus petal instantly changed. It directly turned into the figure of a woman, white and faintly drifting. At the same time, it gave off a strange light and a faint lotus fragrance. At this time, the soul depository cauldron did not move. Whoosh, looking again, Sumo pointed at the ghostly figure. The lotus woman and the ghostly figure slowly merged together under Sumo's magic power. The ghostly figure was originally very similar to Yi Wuhui's main body. Now that it had merged with the lotus woman, it instantly became full of spiritual energy. However, she was still wearing a purple robe. Her eyes were closed as if she was asleep. At this time, from the outside, she was no different from a real person. Buzz, buzz. At this time, the soul depository cauldron finally made a strange sound. However, this time, it did not sway left and right. Instead, it released a faint layer of white mist that wrapped around the ghostly figure's physical body. Then, the white mist gradually seeped into the ghostly figure's physical body. Oh! Seeing this, Sumo's lips curled. Because the soul depository cauldron had indeed increased the quality of the physical body. He could feel that the physical body was continuously being refined and improved. After a full hour, the white mist gradually thinned. However, he did not expect the purple robe to melt. In the air, there was a naked female body. Skin like snow, long hair like a waterfall. Curves, exquisite and soul-stirring. This scene greatly exceeded Sumo's expectations. Huh! Sumo could not help but lower her head. Next to her, Yi Wuhui's face was even redder. For a moment, he did not know what to do. Humph! The little white pig was stunned and then covered his eyes with his hoof. Miss Yi, you can merge with the physical body now, Sumo said. Oh. Okay. Yi Wuhui was a little flustered. Then, with a thought, she directly entered the physical body. In fact, the final fusion was a matter of course. There was no problem at all. A blue dress was now on Yi Wuhui's body. After 3,000 years, Yi Wuhui finally had a physical body again. She was a real person now. This was because she had already merged with the 3-inch puppet. She was no longer a god's puppet. Sumo, look up. Yi Wuhui's voice was gentle and shy. Looking at her again, her temperament was out of this world. Yi Wuhui's blue dress fluttered. She was slim and graceful. With one hand gently stroking her hair, she smiled sweetly at Sumo, just like when they first met. Chapter 797. Her blue dress fluttered, and the fragrance of lotus permeated the air. Level 3 Rebirth Realm. This time, after fusing with the Rebirth Immortal Body, Yi Wuhui directly reached Level 3 Rebirth Realm. One had to know that she was previously a one-life immortal completion stage. Even though she was a god's puppet and could avoid the 5 declines, advancing to Level 3 Rebirth Realm was something that could only be encountered by chance. Yi Wuhui felt extremely wonderful. Her smile and frown had its own charm and charm. Sumo raised her head and nodded with a smile. The promise of 3,000 years had finally come to fruition. Yi Wuhui had a real body. Humph! The little white pig leaped into Yi Wuhui's embrace to celebrate. Hee. Yi Wuhui hugged the little white pig and smiled slyly at Sumo. How is it? Do I look different from before? Your appearance and temperament are better than before, Sumo said. I like hearing that. Yi Wuhui nodded and waved his hand. A water mirror appeared in front of her, and she looked at herself in the mirror. Naturally, she was very satisfied with herself. She was a real woman now. This was actually very important to Yi Wuhui. She did not want Sumo to see only a soul every day. At this time, Sumo had already entered the flower bed and walked to the bottom of the black cliff. Half squatting, he formed a seal with his hands. Nether art. Spirit summoning. Sumo shouted softly. Looking again, his fingertips emitted endless nether chi and directly poured into the small nether world. Originally, the nether world was only 3 feet wide. Now it instantly expanded to 7 feet, more than double its original size. Within the nether world, black light crisscrossed. Looking at the red spider lily, it began to grow rapidly. Originally, it was only a few inches of seedlings, but they instantly grew taller and began to intertwine with each other. The 7 sprouts merged into one. The spider lilies were like vines that climbed up the black cliff. At the same time, 7 flower buds began to form, with only a slight difference in size between them. Their opening was just around the corner. Sumo's ascension gave this small netherworld a great deal of power. It could be said that the netherworld was rapidly evolving. At the same time, the red spider lily began its second stage of growth. Sumo walked out of the garden. How long before they open? Yi Wuhui asked. It's hard to say. Sumo shook her head and said, it could be at least a few thousand years, or at most tens of thousands of years. When they bloom, can they transform into white-clothed meditation cultivators? Yi Wuhui asked again. Yes. Sumo said, however, they need my technique to awaken them. Otherwise, they will only be equinox flowers. 7 flowers blooming at the same time? The difference between them is less than 2 hours. Sumo couldn't help but smile. The 7 of them are all very interesting existences. Yes. Yi Wuhui nodded. Then, she thought for a moment and said, Sumo, what are you planning to do next? I want to go to Divine Peacock Mountain. Sumo said. Sumo. Yi Wuhui bit her lower lip and said, Then, can I go with you? This? Sumo hesitated. Divine Peacock Mountain is in the Wisdom Realm. My trip will be filled with danger, and you have just reforged your body. If anything happens, I'm afraid. I'm not afraid. Yi Wuhui looked at Sumo and said, I will help you find Sister Wu'er. Once I find her, I will return to the Pure Land star field or find my ancestral master. At that moment, Yi Wuhui was humble. Actually, she didn't really want to obtain anything, or rather, she didn't dare to think about obtaining anything. She simply wanted to stay by Sumo's side. Humph! The little white pig rubbed her nose against Yi Wuhui's arm and looked at Sumo pitifully. Her meaning was obvious. Sumo, I won't affect anything you do. When it's time to leave, I will leave. Yi Wuhui said, Moreover, since the Wisdom Realm is dangerous, I think you need a helper. I'm not a useless person, and I'm not a burden. Yi Wuhui said. Haha. Sumo laughed. In fact, Yi Wuhui's reasons were both reasons and not reasons. How could he not understand Yi Wuhui's thoughts? How about this? Sumo looked at Yi Wuhui and said, This time, you and I will go to Divine Peacock Mountain together. However, no matter what the final result is, the matter of Divine Peacock Mountain is over. You must return to Northern Chill City of the Pure Land Stellar Region. Bu Xingkong and Yi Xingbai are both there. They will take care of you wholeheartedly. If you agree, then we will do this. If not, then I will go to Divine Peacock Mountain alone. You will cultivate in the soul storage altar. Alright. Yi Wuhui heard this and nodded. I agree. I will go with you to Divine Peacock Mountain. Haha. Alright. Sumo smiled helplessly. Then it's a deal. Whoever goes back on his word is a puppy, Yi Wuhui said with a smile. Sumo nodded but did not continue the topic. She changed the topic. If we want to go to Divine Peacock Mountain, we need to make some preparations. Yes, that's right. Yi Wuhui was in a good mood. Then what can I help you with? Of course there is something you can do. Suemo laughed. However, before that, we should first deal with the matter of the desolate demon shadow. He has already awakened. As she spoke, Sumo patted her storage pouch. Whoosh, a black shadow flew out of the cosmos bag and transformed into a human form. However, the shadow's face could not be seen clearly. It was just a shadow. In fact, it was the shadow of Famine's true form. Demon King. The shadow of Famine's tone was slightly surprised. Where is this? My cave. Sumo smiled. He did not explain much. Shadow, I have wronged you all these years. You have always been in my bag. Ha ha. The shadow of Famine shook his head and sighed. Demon King, what are you saying? If you had not saved me that day, I would have been reduced to ashes long ago. I only want to know, what was the result of that battle? How much time has passed? During that battle, the Supreme Peacock King was subdued by a friend of mine and brought away. Sumo said. As for the time, if we really count it, that battle happened more than 3 million years ago. However, in reality, you have only been in my bag for about 1,000 years. Oh! The shadow of Famine did not understand. Back then, I mistakenly boarded the immeasurable ship and arrived in the world 3 million years ago. Actually, I just want to know the truth. Sumo said. The immeasurable ship. The shadow of Famine was shocked. However, he did not ask further. Because he understood that there were many things that he did not need to ask. Another 3 million years. Ha ha. The demon shadow of desolation let out a long sigh. Life and death, time flies. I, the shadow of Famine, am still just a shadow. Hee hee. Suemo laughed. Yao Ing, there are actually 2 reasons why I let you out this time. Demon King, please speak. First, I can help you reforge your body. Sumo said. The shadow of Famine did not show any excitement. Instead, he asked, what's the second thing? The second thing is that I want you to accompany me to the Sanskrit realm. Sumo's voice deepened. Because I want to go to Divine Peacock Mountain. To find someone and take revenge. Chapter 798. Find Someone. Revenge. Sumo's tone was very heavy when she said these words. The Peacock clan had crossed paths with him time and time again, and they had long since formed an irreconcilable enmity. Therefore, Sumo's departure would definitely set off a bloody storm. Ha ha! When Yaoing heard this, he couldn't help but laugh heartily. Demon King, I like your second task. Sumo was surprised. How about the first one? Demon King. Yaoing shook her head and sighed. The Demon King saved my life. Back then, Xiao Huang and I made a life and death pact. Unfortunately, I still haven't been able to fulfill my promise. Although I, Yaoing, am just a shadow, I value favors and promises the most. I deeply regret this. Therefore, it is my duty to accompany the Demon King to the Divine Peacock Mountain in the Wisdom World. Naturally, I will not refuse. However, there's no need to reforge my body. Why? Sumo said, the body I forged for you will definitely fuse with your shadow. It definitely won't be like before, where you have to constantly possess them. Huang Ying laughed. I appreciate the Demon King's good intentions. It's just that after so many tens of thousands of years, I've actually obtained many physical bodies. To me, Xiao Huang's fleshly body is already perfect. However, I still experienced the destruction of my physical body twice. Actually, every time my physical body dissipates, it's a life and death torture. Maybe I shouldn't have a physical body in the first place. After all, I am only a shadow of the monster race. The demon shadow of Famine let out a long sigh. So, I don't want a mortal body. That way, I might be able to perform many of my techniques better. To me, my physical body might be a burden. Sumo didn't expect this at all. The demon shadow of famine was actually a bit disheartened at the thought of possessing a mortal body. Demon King, I can see that you have already become a supremacy. Then, if you don't mind, I, Demon Shadow, am willing to become one of your shadow guards and follow you from now on in order to repay you and your father's kindness. As he spoke, Desolation's Demon Shadow knelt on one knee. This was even more out of Sumo and Yi Wuhui's expectations. The two of them could not help but look at each other. One had to know that the shadow of the Desolation was in existence at the peak of the reincarnation realm. He was even more powerful than Sumo's strongest puppet, Scarlet Child. However, at this time, Huang Ying actually gave up the opportunity that Sumo had given him to reconstruct his physical body and was willing to become his shadow guard. Yao Ying, do you have any requests in the future? Sumo asked. What do you want in the future? The famine demon shadow was stunned. It thought for a moment and then slowly said, First, I am repaying a debt of gratitude. Second, if one day the Demon King can take another step forward, then I am willing to guard the Sanskrit world for the Demon King. Lord of Wisdom. Sumo's lips curled up. Yao Ying, aren't you afraid of betting on the wrong treasure here? It's not a bet. Desolation's Demon Shadow said solemnly. If the Demon King succeeds, then I have this request. If not, I, Yao Ying, will have no regrets. At the same time, to express my sincerity, I am willing to offer a shadow soul. As he spoke, Desolation's Demon Shadow directly shot out a black shadow from between his eyebrows. It was a shadow soul, just like a cultivator's soul blood. One day, if it had any disloyalty, the person with the shadow soul could directly kill it. This action was enough to show Desolation's sincerity. Alright. Sumo's eyes narrowed and then she nodded. Yao Ying, if you follow me, I will definitely treat you sincerely. I will temporarily accept this shadow soul. When I succeed, I will definitely return it to you. At the same time, if you want to forge an immortal body, I can do it for you. Sumo raised her hand and directly received the shadow soul in her palm. At the same time, she helped Desolation up. Thank you, Demon King. Desolation said. These two lianbua are items of the demon race. I will give them to you. With your realm, you will be able to control them. As she spoke, Sumo patted her storage bag. 2 rays of light appeared in the cave abode of the soul storage altar. It was none other than the peacock halberd and peacock king's plume that Wang Shui had obtained from the peacock king. Those were 2 demon race lianbua. Their value was immeasurable. In a sense, it was even more important than forging an immortal body. Thank you, Demon King. Desolation's Demon Shadow was slightly excited. I have no way to repay you, but I am willing to go through fire and water for the Demon King. After all, not to mention the lianbua, even a venerable divine weapon at the venerable realm could only be found by luck. But Sumo had given it 2 at once. Yi Wuhui, who was at the side, could not help but pout. Desolation's Demon Shadow received the 2 lianbua and directly merged them into its shadow body. Needless to say, Desolation's Demon Shadow was an extremely special existence. Demon Shadow, you will be in charge of protecting Lady Yi from now on. Normally, unless she or I summon you or there is no danger, you do not need to show yourself. Sumo said. Yes. Demon Shadow understands. As it spoke, Desolation's Demon Shadow bowed. Looking again, the black shadow instantly fell to the ground, like ice melting. However, the shadow under Yi Wuhui's feet became thicker. From now on, he will be your servant. Sumo said to Yi Wuhui. Oh! Yi Wuhui smiled. This is considered a gift from you? This is a huge gift. A peak rebirth realm expert who possesses 2 lianbua is definitely an invincible existence below the venerable realm. Even if he meets a venerable, he should be able to block 2 or 3 moves and escape unscathed, right? Yes. Sumo smiled and took out a storage bag at the same time. There are some things in here that you might be able to use. I'm giving them all to you. The venerable flying dagger that was previously refined is also in here. Hee. Yi Wuhui did not stand on ceremony and directly took the storage bag. This was because her previous storage bags were all broken. She was now penniless, so she naturally had to accept all of Sumo's aid. At the same time, she took out the flying dagger. That flying dagger was only 3 inches and as thin as a cicada's wings. It was a venerable divine weapon that was suitable for the current Yi Wuhui. On the contrary, if it was Lianhua, she might not be able to control it. This was also the reason why Sumo gave the Lianhua to Desolation's demon shadow and let it protect Yi Wuhui. This dagger is not bad. Yi Wuhui held it in his hand. From now on, it will be called Regretless Flying Dagger. In the future, if there is a chance, I will refine other Dharma treasures for you. Sumo said again. Good. In the future, don't go back on your word. Yi Wuhui said. I won't. Sumo smiled. Yi Wuhui nodded with satisfaction and then said, Sumo, when do you want to go to the Prajna world? About 10 years. I need to stabilize my realm and make some simple preparations. Sumo thought for a moment. I need to reorganize and refine some Dharma treasures and puppet. Yes. Yi Wuhui smiled. Just in time, I also need time to organize the things you gave me. Let's split up and prepare. Okay. Sumo nodded. Looking again, Yi Wuhui waved one hand. In an instant, many of the small puppets in the soul-storing altar cave directly gathered in front of Yi Wuhui. With a turn of Yi Wuhui's hand, they had already merged together. The rebirth realm. Yi Wuhui's magic power was no longer what it used to be. Her puppetry technique was personally taught by Bu Miaotian, so she naturally had to refine something that was more suitable for her. Sumo, on the other hand, chose to organize in the front cave. The puppets and Dharma treasures in his storage bag were already a bit messy. Divine Peacock Mountain was a tiger's den after all. They had to make proper preparations before they could go. End of this scroll. Chapter 799. In the Galaxy. On the demonic ark stood a man and a woman, both cultivators. The male cultivator was dressed in white and was as beautiful as a demon. The female cultivator was dressed in a blue dress. They were Sumo and Yi Wuhui. The 10 years were about to end. They had just left the soul storage altar cave for less than 2 months. Now, they had arrived at the northern edge of the Dead Souls star region on the demonic boat. Previously, they had crossed the entire Dead Souls star region. However, this time, they did not encounter Wang Yu, nor did they stop at the Dust Net 3 planet. The journey was very smooth. At this moment, in front of them was a vast interstellar barrier. This interstellar barrier was 3 million miles wide. It was even wider than the broken star zone. Dust Net, Prajna, Colored Glass, and Swaying were the 4 medium-sized worlds of the Yizong realm. In fact, according to what Li Beihan had said, there were 3,000 worlds like Dust Net in the Yizong realm. Of course, 3,000 was an imaginary number. And back then, the white-robed king had only said that the Yizong realm governed 4 medium-sized worlds. Their words seemed to contradict each other. However, according to Sumo's understanding, the Yizong realm should have 3,000 worlds. However, Dust Net, Prajna, Colored Glass, and Swaying were 4 relatively large medium-sized worlds. Or, they were the core worlds of the Yizong realm. Late-stage realm-breaking realm cultivators could travel unimpeded in a medium-sized world. However, to travel between medium-sized worlds, one needed to be at the rebirth state. Unless, like Yi Wuhui had traveled with Bu Miaotian to the Yizong realm, they had a rebirth state cultivator to lead them. Sumo and Yi Wuhui were both above the rebirth state, so they were fine. This interstellar barrier was a bit similar to the chasm that Sumo had used to cross the pure Earth star in her early years. However, there were almost no living creatures in the interstellar barrier. The most dangerous things in the interstellar barrier were the various flying continents, broken stars, and the interstellar chasm. If one's cultivation was not enough, they would be killed or devoured by these things. The living environment in the interstellar barrier was extremely harsh. Cultivators below the rebirth state could not withstand it at all. This was also the main reason why there were almost no living creatures here. At this moment, the demonic boat had shrunk to 3 feet. There was a protective barrier around it. Sumo and Yi Wuhui sat steadily on it. There was no need to control the demonic boat. Ordinary flying continents and shattered stars would be directly dispersed by the demonic ship's aura. Unless a large interstellar rift or a venerable expert appeared, it would be impossible to shake the demonic ship. After leaving the dust world, the star chart in Sumo's mind became useless. However, they had an excellent guide, the Shadow of Famine, because he'd come to the Dead Soul's star region from the Sanskrit realm. Hence, he passed through the interstellar barrier. Thus, Sumo directly asked the desolate demon Shadow if there was anything. Under his guidance, the demonic boat moved forward without any danger. Very quickly, they passed through the interstellar barrier. Huahua, at the last moment, the demonic boat seemed to have broken through an invisible water barrier. Everything suddenly became clear. A whole new world unfolded in front of them. It was completely different from the previous darkness. It was a colorful and incomparably resplendent world. At first glance, Sumo almost thought she was looking at the galaxy world. However, its aura was different from the galaxy world. At the same time, it didn't have the vast aura of the galaxy world. Instead, it had a strange feeling. If the brilliance of the galaxy world was like a lotus, then the beauty of the Sanskrit realm was like a kind of poisonous butterfly. Ancestral Master said that the Sanskrit realm has many strange and dazzling demons. They are beautiful and poisonous, so we must be careful. Now, it seems that it's true, Yi Wuhui said. Back then, wasn't it you who accompanied Bu Miaotian to travel in this world? Sumo asked. Yes. Yi Wuhui nodded. When we traveled in the Sanskrit realm, it was my sister who accompanied the ancestral master, not me. After that, I only heard some old rumors about the Sanskrit realm. Sumo nodded. The relationship between Bu Wuhui and Yi Wuhui was very strange. In fact, Bu Wuhui was a true descendant of the Yi family. It was already clear during the battle with Tian Fu. Yi Wuhui was a puppet of the god. However, the two of them had almost the same memories for a long time, and only then did they become different. As for when they had truly become two separate entities, perhaps only Bu Miaotian knew the best. A puppet of the god was very magical. Bu Xingyun and Yi Wuhui didn't think of themselves as puppets of the god. However, by chance Yi Wuhui found out that the 3-inch puppet sealed her divine soul. In other words, Yi Wuhui was of a higher level than Bu Xingyun. That was why she wanted to get the 3-inch puppet and become a real cultivator. In fact, even now, in Yi Wuhui's mind, she didn't think of herself as a puppet of the god. The biggest difference between a puppet of the god and an ordinary person was that they thought of themselves as cultivators. Sumo didn't ask too many questions. The demonic ship moved forward. Before this, the Shadow of Desolation had already provided them with the star map of the Prajna world. After all, the Shadow of Desolation was a true demon of the Prajna world. The starfields of the Prajna world and the Dusty world were different. The Dusty world was divided into 4 major starfields: east, west, south, and north. The Prajna world, on the other hand, was divided into 3 major astral realms and 2,000 lesser worlds. The 3 astral realms were naturally the Kuan Butterfly Astral, the Chilan Astral, and the Peacock Astral. The Kuan Butterfly Astral was located in the north of the Prajna world. It occupied more than 1/3 of the Prajna world and had at least 3,000 lesser worlds. Its core world was called the Kuan Butterfly Astral. The Chilan Astral occupied the remaining 1/3 of the Kuan Butterfly Astral and controlled about 2,000 lesser worlds. Its core world was called the Chilan Cloud Astral. It got its name because it had 36 extremely special stars. The lesser worlds controlled by the Peacock clan were basically the same as the Chilan clan. Its core world was the Divine Peacock Mountain. The Divine Peacock Mountain was made up of 270 stars. In the Sanskrit world, the other large and small races controlled the remaining 2,000 small world. Some of them controlled dozens of stars, while some of them only controlled one star. However, these 2,000 lesser worlds were not concentrated. They were scattered throughout the vast Prajna world. According to the coordinates, the closest to Sumo and the others was the Chilan Astral, followed by the Peacock Astral, and the furthest was naturally the Kuan Butterfly Astral. This was because Sumo and the others were in the southern starfield of the Prajna world. At this time, if they wanted to reach the Divine Peacock Mountain, they first had to pass through a starfield belonging to the Chilan Astral, and then pass through 2 lesser worlds. Sumo and Yuwuhue felt that there was no need to rush to the Peacock Astral. Although they had the star map and the Shadow of Desolation to guide them, they still wanted to understand the Prajna world more. Especially the Chilan clan. Sumo had interacted with them before. Therefore, the demonic boat moved forward and headed straight for the 5-colored star closest to them. At this time, smoke and dust were rising from the 5-colored star. You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.